few years ago, I had to work on Thanksgiving night. This was a while back, and Target opened their doors at 6 p.m. on Thanksgiving. I know that Walmart was opening at the same time, so I figured that's why they did as well. When I first got the schedule and saw that I was working Thanksgiving, I was really disappointed. I did not want to have to leave my family get-together early, but at least I'd be getting paid time and a half. I was working from 6 p.m. to midnight, so it wasn't too bad. My Target store was pretty large and was expecting quite a few people there. So I remember that I left Thanksgiving and drove to work. When I got there, there was already a line. I went inside and was assigned a check lane to work at. I realized then that we had more people working at once than I had ever seen before. Every check lane was open and there was a worker at it, and there were employees that I had never seen before who were working that night. When the doors opened, customers rushed inside, mostly to the electronics department. The store was soon packed, and I was kept very busy ringing up person after person. The time went by pretty quickly, and after a few hours, I took my break, and then I returned to work. I finished working the rest of my shift, and then at midnight, I was off. I remember that I left my check lane and walked over to clock out. It was the busiest that I had ever seen a Target store at midnight. Customers were still everywhere. I went in and clocked out and then left. I had parked in the back side of the parking lot because of it being so busy, and there were still cars all around the place. When I had almost reached my vehicle though, I saw another guy approaching me wearing a Target uniform. He was a coworker, but I did not recognize him. But basically everybody was working on Black Friday, so that didn't really surprise me. The guy said hi to me as I was walking to my car, and I said hi back to him. He appeared to be around my age, had blonde hair, and was kind of short. He then asked me if I would be able to give him a ride home, saying that he didn't have one. He also added that he didn't live very far away. I didn't know this guy, but because he was a coworker, I said yes. He then told me the direction that he lived, and it wasn't too far out of the way. So he hopped into my car and I got in and began driving. We left the busy Target, crossed a nearby highway, and went down a much quieter road. The guy directed me to his neighborhood not too far off of that road. This area was a little bit more rural. The houses had lots of trees in the front yards and things like that. I remember that about halfway down this really quiet street, the guy told me to turn into a driveway of the next house. I did, to see that it was a pretty typical looking place with a narrow driveway to the left and trees scattered around the front yard. I parked towards the end of the driveway and stopped the car. The guy seemed to take his time getting out of it though. He said thanks for the ride, and then he asked me when the next time I worked was. I found this a little bit odd because I had never even worked with him before, but maybe he just happened to be really new though, so I told him when I worked next. He then went on his phone for a few seconds before starting to open his door slowly. But as he did that, an SUV suddenly appeared and pulled into the driveway from behind us. It stopped there, completely blocking me in the driveway. I was surprised by this and did not know who it was. Now the guy got out of my car, and I saw the doors to the SUV behind me opening as well. Two men then got out of it, and they both started walking towards my side of the car. The guy who I had given a ride to then told me to get out of the car. I didn't know why, and I didn't want to. The men heading towards my car seemed kind of sketchy. With the passenger's door still open, the guy stood there with the other men approaching. Both of the men went to my driver's side, and one of them tried opening my door, with the other trying to open my rear door. Luckily, both of them were locked. At this point, I didn't know what to do, but I knew that I had to get away from them. I hit the gas, going farther up the driveway. Then I turned to the right and started driving through their front yard. Luckily, my car didn't get stuck or anything. I then cut through the yard, went around the guy's SUV, and then back out onto the street. Then I quickly drove away and went home. Soon after, I found out that the guy did not work at Target at all. It was all a setup. I reported it to the police, and I'm really glad that I got away from there. I've always gone out shopping on Black Friday for many years now. But 2 years ago was by far the scariest experience I've ever had. It was Thanksgiving Day, and I was excited to go buy a new TV. I was planning on going to Target for a big sale they were having on electronics, and they were opening at 6 p.m. on Thanksgiving night. I was at my parents' place, and they had over quite a few of our family members from my mom's side of the family. I chatted with all of them, and then had dinner with everyone. Then I left their house to Target to go buy a giant TV. I arrived at Target about 20 minutes before they opened. I saw that there was already a decent-sized line of people waiting to get inside. It wasn't too long, though, and I figured I still had a decent chance of getting the TV I wanted. I got out of my car and went to the back of the line, and as I did, I saw a few other people get in line behind me. I waited in line for the remaining minutes until I saw the doors to Target being unlocked. I watched as people started to go inside, then I walked quickly with everyone else, and once I got inside, I made a beeline for the electronics department. The store was really crowded, and it was hard to get through everyone, but I was able to make it there in a few minutes without running into anyone or anything like that. I got to the TVs to see a few people had already grabbed the size and brand that I had wanted, which was 50 inches. I walked quickly over to them, and just as I did, I saw another person grab one to reveal that there was just one more left behind it. I quickly reached out and got the last one. I was so happy to actually have it in my hands, because I had been pretty nervous I wouldn't be able to get it. I knew how quickly they would sell out. Probably 2 or 3 seconds after I had gained full control of it, someone came from my right side and grabbed the TV that I had in my arms. It started to come out of my hands until I grabbed it and pulled it back. At that point, the person shoved me a little bit and I almost gave up the TV. I turned and saw a man wearing a blue coat and a slight beard. He was looking at me, and as we made eye contact, he said that I had his TV. I said sorry to the man, but I had gotten the last one. The man started to turn and walk away, but then did a 360 turn and came back to me. He then asked me if I could please give it to him. I really didn't want to, and I said, "No, I'm sorry." He then told me how he would have got to the TV sooner, but somebody had gotten in his way. Then he added he thought he had got to the TV before me as well. I knew the man was behind me, and I had got to it before him. He had tried to take it out of my hands after I already had it. I didn't want to cause a scene, but I wasn't going to give up the last TV to him, so I told him sorry one last time and started towards the check lanes. The man followed me all the way there, trying to reason with me. The more we walked, the angrier he became. It came to the point where I just started to ignore him. I finally got to the check lane, and he cursed at me and walked away. I checked out and walked my TV to my car in the parking lot and loaded it up. But as I was putting my TV in my car, I saw the man start to approach me once again. This time I got a bad feeling. It was a different environment out in the parking lot where there were less people around. I hurried up as fast as I could and then shut the door. The man was standing there from about 20 feet away, flipping me off. Then he got into a car that was parked nearby. I ignored him, and I actually felt kind of bad for the guy because I knew how great of a deal I was getting on the TV, but I also knew I didn't owe it to him to give him the last one. I started up my car and began to drive away. I drove back to my house to drop off the TV. My house was close to the Target, as well as my parents' house. As I turned onto my street, I noticed a car turn behind me. Then, as I was pulling into my driveway, I saw the car stop in front of my driveway. I got a terrible feeling. The car then started to honk. I looked and saw the man from Target yelling something out his window. Then he sped away in his car. I was glad he was gone, but I was a little concerned that he now knew where I lived. The man seemed to be a little crazy to get so worked up over a TV. I brought my TV in the house. Then I locked it up and went back to my parents for the rest of Thanksgiving. I stayed there until about 10 p.m., then drove back to my place. When I got there, I just felt suspicious. I was worried the guy had tried to break into my house or something when I was gone, but I figured I was just being paranoid. I looked around for my car at my place, and everything seemed fine, so I got out and headed for the front door. But as I made it to about 10 feet from my door, I noticed something. I had a couple of pillars in front of my house, and behind the side of the right pillar, I saw what appeared to be an arm. I knew who it had to be. I wanted to run away, but didn't want to make it obvious. I quickly stopped in my tracks, but said, "Forgot my phone," to myself. I was hoping this would work. Then I turned around and started walking back to my car calmly. The man seemed to buy it, and I wanted badly to run to my car, but I decided to remain calm. I didn't hear or notice the man moving at all, but when I reached about 10 feet from my car, I couldn't take it anymore. I broke into a sprint and ran the rest of the way. As I had reached my car, I heard the man now running after me. I got inside quickly and drove away as fast as I could. As I did, I felt something hit the car. It seemed like a rock. I drove back to my parents' place and told them everything. There was a decent-sized dent in the side of my car. I stayed there for the night and we called the police as well. However, I don't believe the man was ever caught, but at least I never did hear from him again. I'm a female 21-year-old college student, but this story occurred 2 years ago on Black Friday. I worked at a major retail store, and it was actually Thanksgiving night because we opened early for Black Friday. I was working a shift from 6 p.m. to midnight. I was mainly a cashier, but I also trained to work in electronics as well as fill in at manager when people went on breaks. When we opened, it was immediately very busy and the store was packed. It was my second time working a Black Friday, so I knew what to expect, but it was still pretty crazy. I spent most of the night as a cashier, ringing up customer after customer. When my shift was finally almost over at about 11 p.m., the store was still very busy, and the manager for our area needed to take a break, so I filled in during that time. I basically just overlooked the lanes, and usually didn't have to do a whole lot, so it was pretty easy. About 10 minutes into that, I saw a middle-aged man check out and buy a relatively large TV. After he checked out, he walked over to me and asked if I could help him. I asked him what I could do for him, and he then told me that he needed help getting the TV into his car. I said sure, and I followed him out of the store. He led me to his car, which was parked all the way at the end of the parking lot that still had quite a few cars in it. We arrived at his car, and he said he would open up the back. He had a pretty large SUV, and when I saw it I was relieved, because I was afraid he would be driving a tiny car where the TV wouldn't fit in it. He went towards the front of the car, and then I heard him drop his keys on the ground. He apologized to me and asked if he could borrow the flashlight on my phone to find his keys. I turned my phone to flashlight mode and then handed it to him. He then walked back over to the front of his car, picked up his keys, and unlocked it. He said it was open and I could go ahead and open the back, and then he would come around to help me. I opened it up and saw that he already had all of the seats removed in the back, so that would make the TV fit much better. He came over to the other side of the car across from me and lifted the TV with me out of the shopping cart and into the back of his car. Once it was in his car, he asked me if I could slide it all the way forward for him because he had a bad back. To do so, I had to get into the back of his car completely and push the TV forward. But as soon as my whole body was in the car, he slammed the trunk closed behind me. It really took me by surprise and nearly gave me a heart attack. I turned around to see the man sort of smiling through the window. I figured it must have been a joke, but then I heard the trunk make the locking sound and saw the man start to walk over to the driver's door. He had one of those divider things, so I couldn't reach him in the front of the car. He then got in and started the engine. When he did, I tried the door anyways, but of course it was locked. I asked the man to let me out, but he ignored me completely and started slowly driving away. I looked around desperately to see if anybody had seen what had happened, but this area of the parking lot was poorly lit, and I couldn't see any people in the immediate area. I reached for my cell phone to call for help, but then I remembered that the man still had it. Thankfully, I still had my store walkie-talkie that we used to communicate throughout the store. I didn't know if it would still work at this long of a range, but I knew I had to try. The only problem was it made a really loud beeping noise when you spoke on it, so I turned the volume all the way down to mute so that the man wouldn't hear me, and I pushed down the button to speak. I whispered that I was in trouble and I was in the back of a gray SUV. I couldn't listen back for a response because the walkie was very loud and the man surely would have heard it, so I had to mute it after I spoke. I could only hope that somebody in the store heard me and took me seriously. The man, meanwhile, just kept driving the car and ignoring me the whole time, aside from telling me once that if I did anything crazy or stupid, something bad would happen to me. I just sat in the back of the car as far away from the man as I could and wondered what he was planning to do. We drove down a pretty busy road for a while, probably 10 to 15 minutes, and then turned off to a more quieter one. I was beginning to lose hope when out of nowhere I saw flashing lights behind us. I heard the man curse and he pulled to the side of the road.
I was hoping the police would pull over as well, and sure enough they did. That was one of the best feelings of my life. The man was immediately arrested and I was let out of the truck. My call on the walkie had in fact worked, and one of the store workers had called the police. I was given the next 2 weeks off from work after the incident, and I haven't worked a Black Friday since.
This happened back in 2007. My husband and I were planning on going Black Friday shopping that year. We had a normal Thanksgiving, but then we got up really early the next morning at 4:30 a.m. There were a few things that I was interested in getting, and I had read the advertisements and saw that there were a lot of good deals. We were going to several different stores, but we would be starting at Walmart. We got there a little bit after 5 o'clock in the morning, and it was insanely busy. Firstly, the only available parking spaces were at the far back of the parking lot. Then, when we got inside of the store, it was the busiest that I had ever seen a store in my entire life. You could hardly walk anywhere at all because there were so many people around. My husband and I started to make our way through the store, but it was impossible to walk anywhere without people bumping into you left and right. Within probably 5 minutes of being inside, we were not even halfway to the back of the store yet, and around then, I ended up getting separated from my husband. The mob of people basically swallowed us both, forcing us into different directions. I tried looking around for my husband, but I couldn't figure out which direction he was in. For a little while, I tried going forward, but did not have any luck. I decided at that point to leave the store and try to call my husband on my cell phone. I was much closer to the doors to exit anyways, so I turned around and started going against the grain. I slowly walked through the mob of people, and within several minutes was able to find the doors. Then I got outside of the Walmart, but there were still a bunch of people constantly coming and going from the entrance doors, so I figured that I would go back to the car and call my husband there. I walked all the way to the back end of the parking lot and reached our vehicle, but I then realized that I did not have the keys. My husband had them, and obviously the car was locked. So instead, I just stood by it, where it was finally quiet and not filled with people. I could actually hear myself think, and I took out my cell phone. I saw that my husband had tried to call me. I must not have heard it ringing or felt it vibrating because of being stuck in the large mob of people. So I tried to call him back, but he did not answer. He probably was stuck inside the mob and didn't even notice the call. I figured that he would think to come out of the store like I had, so I decided to wait by our car. It was cool and comfortable outside, and refreshing compared to inside of the crazy mob of Walmart. After being out there just standing around by the car for maybe 5 minutes, I remember I heard a vehicle nearby. I looked over and saw one of those old white Astro vans from the 1990s. It was in rough shape, and the engine was running rather loud. The van slowly made its way from the far back end of the parking lot over to the row of cars that we were parked in. The van started to drive past me very slowly, but then it stopped. I remember that the window then rolled down, and I saw a man with a goatee and a baseball cap was driving it. He said hi to me, and then asked me if I needed a ride. I was already kind of creeped out by him, and I said no thanks. I expected the man to drive away, but he didn't. Instead, the man said, "No, I think you need a ride. Hop in." I said, "No thanks, I'm really good." The man asked me what I was doing out there all alone. At that point, I decided to just go back inside of the Walmart. As crazy of a scene as it was in there, I guess it wasn't that much better out in the parking lot, so I just turned and started walking back for the store. As I walked, the van slowly but loudly started keeping pace with me. The man called out to me several more times, telling me that I should get inside of his car. I just ignored him. Soon, I made it to the front doors, where some other people were around, and I felt better. I remember that the man then turned in his van though, and started to park it along the front side of Walmart by the curb. This was definitely not a parking space. As he parked anyways though, I headed for the doors, but looked back one more time to see the man now getting out of his vehicle. This made me go faster. Soon I rejoined the crazy mob of people, and I was once again brushing shoulders with tons of other shoppers, just trying to make it in. But then I happened to see my husband walking towards me from the other direction. I cut in front of a few people to try to get over to him. It was difficult, but soon we were able to make it back to each other. He was trying to leave the store and go outside. After I found him, we both went towards the exits. Within a couple of minutes, we were able to make it back. Then we left Walmart. When we did, I saw the van still parked out front, but nobody appeared to be inside of it, so the man must have been in the store. I told my husband about the creepy experience with the guy, and we decided to just leave and go to another store instead. I did not see that creepy guy or his van again after that, and I'm not sure if he went inside a Walmart just to go after me or not, but it sure seemed like it. That was one of the craziest Black Fridays that I've ever experienced.
I used to work at a smaller retail clothing store a few years back. We didn't have a whole lot of employees, and usually the store was fairly quiet. I enjoyed working there at the time, and I worked there for a total of 1 year. I was there for one holiday season, and it all started with Black Friday. Normally, we were open at 9 a.m., but on Black Friday, we were going to be opening at 6 a.m. There would be 5 of us working at once instead of the usual 2 or 3. We were having a sale, but it was not like a crazy sale that you would knock down the doors for. Nobody was going to be camping out outside or anything. We were more so taking advantage of all the people that would be in the area by opening early. We were located right in the middle of a large shopping center, and there would be lots of people in the area. I was working from open at 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. I got to work bright and early, and things were not too bad for the first couple of hours. We were certainly busier than usual, but nothing that we couldn't handle, especially with 5 of us working. As the day went on though, the store got busier. I was mostly working at the registers and ringing up customers. Soon, it was time for my break. We had a really small break room that was at the back of the store. Back there was a hallway, with a bathroom on one side and a break room on the other. Inside the break room, there was just a couple of tables and chairs and a TV. When I took my break, I was the only person in there, which was expected. It felt good to get off my feet and relax for a little bit. I had been going non-stop for a while. Mostly, I just went on my phone during the break. But when my break was over and I went to leave the break room and go back to work, the door wouldn't open. I tried, and I just couldn't get it. I couldn't tell if the door was broke or if somebody was holding it shut or something. At that point, I texted one of my coworkers who was working. I asked her to come to the break room, telling her that I didn't know why, but I couldn't open the door. Then, I went back down and sat at the table. Suddenly, the door opened. I expected to see a coworker, but instead, I saw this random guy. He didn't work here, but I had seen him earlier inside the store. I remembered that. He was a big guy, probably over 6 feet tall, and weighing at least 200 pounds. He also had a beard, and took a couple of steps into the room without saying anything. I started to tell the guy that this was an employees-only room, and customers were not allowed. He ignored me and walked faster in my direction. When he got really close, I stood up and backed away. The way that he was approaching me was really suspicious, especially with him not saying anything. When I moved back, he started to lunge at me. There was an emergency exit there in the break room. Nobody ever used it, and I wasn't sure if an alarm would go off or something if I did. But now it was the time to use it. I ran for the door and opened it up. I didn't hear an alarm or anything, but it did open, and when I got outside, the man started to grab me. We both left the building, and were in a side parking lot. It was a much quieter area to park, and not as many people were over here. The man grabbed me by both of my arms up near my shoulders. He was much larger than I was, and I struggled to get away. I started to yell, but he quickly covered up my mouth. I was struggling as much as I could, but we were slowly moving farther away from the store. As we were getting closer to the cars, I heard my coworker suddenly start yelling. She was standing in the opening of the doorway that we had left through. We were now about 30 or 40 feet away from her. The man was trying to get me to his car, which appeared to only be about 10 feet away from us now. My coworker was yelling like crazy, telling the man to let me go. I hadn't seen anybody at all in that particular area of the parking lot, but soon some others showed up. When we made it to the guy's car and he was about to open the doors, I heard more voices. I briefly saw some people coming from around the corner and another person come out the door that my coworker was standing at. The man then suddenly let me go, shoving me away, and I fell to the ground. He then got inside of his car quickly and sped off. As he did, several people reached me. 3 men and 2 women had come from both around the corner of the store and from the break room. I guess the yelling had caused a commotion, and people nearby found out about it just in the nick of time. The man had gotten away, but multiple witnesses had already called the police. They had his description, and I was also okay and free from him. We went back inside the store, and after the police got there, I talked with them for a while. I got the rest of the day off work and some time off after that as well. The police were also able to locate the man based on all of the information. I feel extremely lucky to have narrowly escaped what could have been a really bad situation. I'm really grateful to my coworker and to all of the people who stopped to help me. I haven't worked a Black Friday since.
Back in the year 2000, I worked at a GameStop for a while. This was a really fun time in video games because the PlayStation 2 came out earlier that year. I remember buying one and also the lines of people to get them that day. So when Black Friday rolled around later on in the year, we figured that it would be a similar situation. The PS2 was still a hot seller, and it was going on sale as well as many other games. At our store, it was part of a small strip mall, and we would only allow a certain number of people to be shopping at once. So somebody would stand out by the door and let people in when other customers left. Otherwise, the small store would be so crowded and it would be a risk of shoplifting and things like that. I don't remember exactly when we opened that morning, but I know that it was pretty early and still dark out at the time. I was working with 4 other coworkers that morning, and I got there about 30 minutes before we opened. I was assigned to be the person who would stand outside and keep the line in order, as well as make sure that the store didn't get too busy. I didn't really want to do that, but I guess it wasn't that difficult either. So a little bit before open time, I went out there, and there was already a decent line of people outside. I announced to everybody that we were only letting a certain amount of people in at a time. Then we opened, and the doors were unlocked, and people started filing in. For the first hour or so, things went pretty well. The line was organized and went smoothly. At one point, though, there was an interesting-looking guy that got in line. I noticed him when he was maybe 10 people from the front. He was a somewhat tall and thin man, wearing a rather odd and creepy mask completely covering his head. It was obviously not Halloween, so I didn't know why he was wearing it. He looked kind of creepy, but it was probably just a joke. When I was letting more people in the store, the guy got closer to the front of the line. That's when I realized that he did not appear to be with anybody else, but by himself. This added to the strangeness of it, and when I was letting more people in, he didn't go. I remember that it was his turn, and he just stood there holding up the line. I told him that he could go in, but he didn't move. He just ignored me, and after a while, he moved to the side a little, and some people behind him started to go in front of him. Then he just kept standing there. More people walked past him, and he stayed in the same spot for like 30 more minutes to an hour. Soon, things quieted down enough that I no longer had to be outside. There was no longer a line of people outside the store, just this one guy standing there. I let everybody who was going to the store in right away, but the masked man did not enter. He just kept standing in the same spot, sort of looking at me and sort of looking towards the store. I didn't know what his deal was. I tried asking him, but he just ignored me. So then I was able to go back inside of the store and work in there for the rest of the time, helping customers. I had pretty much forgotten about the guy after a while of being inside. But then, several hours later, I saw him standing outside and looking into the window. He did not enter the store though. I wondered what on earth he was still doing here. But for the rest of my shift at work that day, I didn't see him after that. Sometime in the early afternoon, I got off of work. I left the store and walked out to my car in the parking lot. When I got to my car, I noticed off in the distance the same guy hiding in the bushes. He was looking right at me. It was very strange. I just got inside of my car, started the engine, and left. After that, I never saw him again. I don't know who the guy was or what he was doing. If that was some kind of a prank, he really went all out, acting very creepy, as well as being there for like 6 hours. Several years back, I remember that many stores used to open at 6 p.m. on Thanksgiving Day. During this time, I was in my early 20s and in college, and I had only gone out shopping on Thanksgiving one other time, and that was at around midnight. But on this year in particular, my family was hosting Thanksgiving at our house, and my friend who lived down the street was also having family over. We decided that the two of us would go shopping that night, not long after the stores opened. Our families would have dinner at about 3 or 4, so by 6 we could leave and then come back. The only reason we went was because we were hoping to get new phones that were going on sale for super cheap. There were a few other things that we were interested in buying too, but that was the main attraction. So a bunch of family members came over to my family's house in the late morning and early afternoon. By about 5:30 p.m., most people were still there, but I left to go Black Friday shopping. I met up with my friend, and we drove down to the local shopping center, which is about 5 to 10 minutes away. After getting there, we started doing some shopping. We were not planning on being out that late at all. Both of us were able to get the new phones that we wanted, and we went to Target, Walmart, and a couple of other stores. Everywhere that we went was very busy as expected. Then at like 8 o'clock we drove back home. My friend and I went to my house, and we then went inside. My friend knew my family pretty well, so we all just kind of hung out in the house. There were still some of my aunts and uncles and people there, but not too many. Not long after getting back though, I remember noticing a car parked out front on the side of the road that I didn't recognize. The engine was running and the lights were on. It had parked between 2 other cars of family members that were there. I watched for a little while out of curiosity. Within about a minute, the driver's door opened and a man got out. I watched him then leave the car, and I did not have any idea who he was. The man started walking into the yard, and I was sure that he was going to knock on our front door or something. But instead of going up to the front step, he walked around towards the back of the house. I was very confused. I thought that maybe he was going to the neighbors, because the houses are pretty close to each other, and the neighbors might have been having people over for Thanksgiving. I didn't really know. So I thought it was strange, but I wasn't really creeped out or anything. But then I headed over towards the dining room to get a snack. It was then that I saw the figure of somebody outside approaching the back door. I also realized that the back door was unlocked, probably because people had been using it to go in and out during the day. I sprinted over to the door and I locked it, just before whoever it was arrived and tried opening it. I then noticed that it was the same man. He then walked away from the door after seeing me in the window. I went back around to the front, and a short time later saw the man enter his car and then drive away. I talked to a few people about it, and figured that maybe somebody had followed us home from the shopping area. Why, I don't know, but I can't think of any other explanation for it.
This happened last year. I currently work at a pretty popular clothing store. I've been working there for almost 2 years and do a little bit of everything. Last year was my first Black Friday at that store. I'd worked Black Friday one other time at a previous retail job I had, and I also go Black Friday shopping every year, so I knew about how busy and crazy it could possibly get. I worked at 5 a.m. on Friday, and when we opened, things got busy pretty much right away. After working at the cash registers for a few hours, I moved to organizing things throughout the store. We were slightly less busy, but still had lots of people throughout the store. I was at one end when a man approached me. He was holding a sweater, and he asked me if they had it in a size medium. I looked at it and then walked over to where the sweaters were. I saw that we did have several of them and showed them to the man, but he didn't seem too interested in the actual sweaters. Instead, he started asking me questions about myself, how I was doing when I got off work, if I was single. The guy seemed like a total creep. He was tall, thin, and bald. I talked professionally to him, and finally, I think he got the hint that I wasn't interested in him, and he went on his way. I went back to doing the work that I had been. However, I did notice the guy staring at me from a distance. It wasn't all that obvious, especially with all the people that were there, but it sure was creepy. I looked up every minute or so, and would always see the guy standing somewhere staring at me. I was really creeped out. Soon after, though, it was time for one of my breaks. It couldn't have come at a better time. I was really happy to get off the sales floor away from this guy. I'd been working for several hours now, and when I came back from my break, the store was still really busy, but the man was now gone. I didn't see him anywhere throughout the store and was really happy about that. I worked until 1 p.m., and then, finally, was off for the day. I was tired, but planned on going shopping with my friend Amelia afterwards. So, I got some coffee at Starbucks, and then we did some Black Friday shopping. When I got home that night, I watched a movie and fell asleep at my apartment. However, I woke up at some point. I really didn't know what woke me, but I sat up in bed and looked around. Then, I saw the same creepy guy from earlier. He was staring right into my bedroom window. My apartment was on ground level, so he could just look right in.
I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Was this a dream? It wasn't. We were making eye contact, and he just kept staring at me. I was terrified, and I ran out of my bedroom and into the bathroom that was out of view of the windows. I shut the door and then called the police. I explained to them that some guy was staring into my bedroom window who had also been staring at me at work earlier in the day. As I was on my phone, I thought that I heard him trying to open the back door leading outside from my apartment. I stayed in the bathroom with the door locked. The police got there about 10 minutes later. Unfortunately, the man was long gone by then. They looked around but couldn't find him. There was really nothing else that could be done, so after telling me to call them if I saw anything else, the police left. I was sure to cover all of my windows well before going back to bed. I haven't seen the guy since then at all, but it still scares me that he knows where I live. I really don't know how he found out where I lived either, other than thinking he must have somehow followed me home, which is really creepy. After the holiday season last year, I got another job, but I still occasionally work at the same store, and now with Black Friday coming up, I'm planning to help out and work there again. Hopefully the guy doesn't return. I used to work at Target. This was around 5 years ago. I mostly worked on the sales floor, but was also trained to be a cashier and do some other stuff. One year, I was scheduled to work on Black Friday. Target opened at 6 p.m. on Thanksgiving night, and because at the time I was still in high school and had just turned 18 years old, I got off by 10 p.m. It was nice to only have to work for about 4 hours, and I clocked in that night at about 5:45 p.m. When I got there, I saw that there was already a line outside, and the parking lot was nearly full. I went inside through the employee-only entrance. When I got inside, I immediately saw that just about everybody we had was working. I had worked there for about 6 months at the time, and knew most of all the other employees because of working on the sales floor, and also sometimes cashiering. I would see just about everybody, and I said hi to a bunch of people that I knew. I even saw some faces that I didn't recognize. I'm sure there were some new seasonal workers, and other people who normally didn't work the same times as me. All of our managers were working as well, and I figured that we wouldn't have a problem with the Black Friday rush. However, when the doors were unlocked and a bunch of people rushed into the store, things got really busy fast. I quickly found myself doing many different tasks, and time was flying by. I was helping customers find things, picking up items people had left places and putting them back where they belong, and for a short time I cashiered. I think we had every single lane in the store open, which I had never seen before. After a few hours, I was near the back of the store, organizing one of the many shelves that had been messed up. We were still really busy, but not quite as busy as we had been in the hour or so after opening. Another employee came into my aisle and asked if I had a second. I looked up and saw a guy that I didn't recognize. He must have been one of the new seasonal guys. The Target name tag on his red shirt said, Michael. I said, sure, what do you need? He said to me that he was new and this was like his 4th day working, and he wasn't really sure how to handle a situation. I said I could try to help and asked him what the situation was. Michael said he would show me, and we walked out of the aisle. Then we walked past several customers and through a door on the side of the store leading to the backroom area that we had. Back there, we just had products that hadn't made it to the sales floor yet. We were on the side of the store opposite from grocery, so it was quieter back there. After we walked back, we went through an exit door leading to the outside. Then, Michael walked out, and I followed. When we had made it now outside of the store, I was very confused. Outside the store, there was a little sidewalk, a small grass area with trees planted here and there, and then there was a quiet road. When I was out there, I noticed there was a car parked on the side of the road right next to where we were. Michael said, I'm trying to help these customers. I asked who they were, and I was interrupted by the doors of the car opening. It was a typical 4-door car, which was black, and I saw 2 men get out from the front seats. They were fairly large, and both had hats and sunglasses on, as well as gloves. The gloves weren't too strange because it was cold out, but the sunglasses sure were. I then felt myself being grabbed near the top of my arms, just below my shoulders, by Michael, who was behind me. He started pushing me towards the 2 men and the car. I asked what was going on and what he was doing. I couldn't believe this was actually happening. Get in the car, Michael said. It took a few seconds for me to kind of grasp the situation. The men seemed like they were coming over to help Michael get me inside their car. I struggled, but Michael's grip was strong. I started screaming and kicked out with my feet at Michael's ankles. It felt like I got him really good on the shin. This caused him to let go of me and almost fall to the ground. When this happened, both of the men started running to stop me. I turned around and sprinted towards the door, but quickly realized that it would be locked. The doors were rarely used and always locked from the outside. I realized then that I would have to try and outrun these men around to the front side of the store. I kept sprinting along the side, but could tell that the other men were gaining on me. I changed directions and then started running out into the street. Michael had gotten up and was now running after me as well. I was screaming like a crazy person and running to try to get away. When they were within probably 5 feet of me, I barely made it to the parking lot and saw a car that appeared to be driving in our direction. I ran right towards it and it honked at me. However, the men chasing me didn't want to grab me right in front of somebody else, at least that's what I figured. Instead, the men just kind of stood back and watched. I ran to the driver's door and yelled for them to call the police. Whoever was driving the car must have been super confused, but when the men heard me saying this, they started to leave. From there, I was able to go back inside the Target store. Police were called, and I told them everything I could. Unfortunately, the men did get away. Michael, if that was even his name, didn't even work there. I guess it's not too hard to find a red shirt and khakis and get a hold of a Target name tag. On Black Friday, nobody would really suspect him because of how busy it was. Our store did have security cameras, so I'm hoping that he was caught, whoever he was. I'm just glad I was able to get away. This is something that happened years ago. On that year in particular, I remember that many stores were opening their doors right at midnight on Black Friday. Normally, I was not one to camp out and wait in line, but on that year in particular, I decided to. For a few days leading up to Thanksgiving, I'd been talking with my friend Sam about it. He really wanted to because there were some great deals at some stores, Best Buy in particular. So by Thanksgiving, we ended up deciding that we would. After the Thanksgiving get-togethers with our families, we both met up at about 9 p.m., a whole 3 hours before the doors opened. We went to the shopping center near where we lived, which had just about every major store in the area. After Sam and I arrived at Best Buy, there were already some people in line, but not too many. I would say maybe 50 people or so in front of us. Sam brought some folding chairs for us to sit in, and then we just waited and talked. It got cold sitting out there, but people soon got in line behind us, and by 11:30 at night there were probably at least 100 people behind us. The main thing that I was hoping to get was a laptop, and Sam was getting one as well. But Sam also wanted to buy a TV, because they had one that was on sale for a really great deal. So eventually, it was midnight, and we heard cheering from up front in the line, and we saw the doors open up. Things were pretty civil, and people rushed inside, but at a fast walk. Nobody was sprinting or knocking each other over or anything. We made it inside quickly, and then went straight for the laptops. Personally, I didn't realize how much everyone was trying to buy these same laptops that I wanted to get. I knew they were a great deal, but I figured that they would probably be available for several hours at least. However, when we got to the laptops, Sam grabbed one and I did the same. I then saw many other people crowded around and start taking them. I realized how lucky we were to have gotten there when we did. So I took my laptop and Sam took his, and we started heading over to the TVs where Sam would get one. The store by this point was completely crowded with a ton of people, and it was only getting busier. As Sam and I made our way to the TVs and were about halfway there, I remember somebody tried grabbing my laptop. I had been holding it in my right hand and did not have a very secure grasp on it. I felt somebody come up right behind me and then tug on it. I almost let go, but thankfully I didn't, and I quickly turned and grabbed it with my other hand as well. There was a brief tug-of-war contest that lasted for about 2 seconds, and I maintained control of the laptop. I looked, and I saw this shorter man with dark hair who was the guy who had tried grabbing it, but after letting go, he turned around and quickly went back into the crowd and out of my sight. I didn't get a real good look at him. I was glad that I still had the laptop, so I turned and now held it like a football, securing my arm around it. I hurried to catch up with Sam, who didn't realize what had happened. Soon we both arrived at the TVs, and Sam was also able to get one of them before they sold out. Then we started making our way back through the crowd up to the check lanes. Obviously, this would take longer than usual. I tried to hold on tight to the laptop. Well, almost halfway up to the check lanes, I felt somebody try grabbing it again. The back part of the box was exposed, and that's what they tried pulling on. This time, the tug from behind was much harder and forceful. Fortunately, I had a pretty good grip on it, and I still almost let go of it, but I didn't. I then quickly turned around and I saw that it was the same guy. He was standing right there in the crowd. I remember that he looked angry for a moment, and then he started laughing, almost as if to say he was just messing with me. But I knew that he wasn't. I knew he was really trying to take the laptop from me, but after that, he quickly turned around and blended in with the crowd again. There were so many other people around, I'm not even sure if anyone else noticed. But when I turned back, I saw that Sam had seen it, at least part of it. He asked me if that guy had tried taking my laptop. I said yes, and told him how he had tried to take it before as well. We guarded our items defensively and made the rest of the way up to the checkouts. If somebody had been able to take our items from us before we checked out, it wasn't stealing because they weren't paid for yet. So if they were able to take it, they could just walk up and then buy it instead of us buying it. And the store was so busy that even if we found an employee to complain about it, there's a chance that they wouldn't be able to do anything. So thankfully, we got to the checkout line and it moved pretty quickly. We were able to buy the items, and after paying for them, we left the store. In the parking lot, people were still walking in and out, but I had parked in the back and it was pretty quiet over there. As we walked past the cars through the parking lot, I remember that I was talking with Sam about what happened in more detail. As I did, I turned around and I saw the same guy now leaving the store and walking in our direction. He did not have anything in his hands, such as a bag from the store or an item that he bought. I told Sam that was him, and after seeing the guy quickly leaving the store, we decided to walk faster to make it to the car. Like I said, we were way in the back of the parking lot. So we started walking fast, and a few moments later, I looked back again. The guy was still heading towards us. Maybe he was just also going to his car and happened to park by us, but I didn't want to take the chance. Soon we were able to make it to my car, and there were a few open parking spaces around us because we were literally in the far back corner. After we put our items in the back seat, we went around and got into the front. I was driving, and after closing my door and locking it, I saw in the mirror the man now reaching my vehicle. He walked behind it, but did not go past it. He just kind of stopped right there. We could not leave until he moved out of the way. I remember Sam asking what the guy was doing. I had no idea. He continued to just stand there for at least over a minute. He wasn't really looking at us, but just kind of casually standing around, just a few feet from the back of my car. Then he turned and did start looking at us for a few moments. Sam rolled down his window slightly and asked the man what was going on. The man then turned and started walking around to Sam at the passenger's window. Before he got there though, he tried opening the back door to the car really quickly. Now that he was no longer blocking my way to back up, as he was reaching Sam at the front passenger side, I hit the gas and reversed out of the spot. We left the guy standing there near our parking space. After that, we left the parking lot and got out of there. We went to a couple more stores briefly and then made it back to our homes safely. Looking back, that was the craziest experience I've ever had on Black Friday. I really don't know why that guy kept trying to take my laptop. Possibly he had tried taking laptops from multiple people is my guess, but when he followed us out to the parking lot, it was really strange.
A few years ago, I went Black Friday shopping. Originally, I had just planned on going to the mall on actual Black Friday in the morning with my mom. However, there were a couple of things on sale that I wanted to get people for Christmas gifts, and I thought they might sell out by the next day. I decided to go Black Friday shopping on my own on Thanksgiving night, and then go again with my mom the next day. My parents and I were at family's house for Thanksgiving, and after we got home, I left to go shopping at about 10 p.m. I went to the nearby shopping center that had pretty much all of the popular stores and restaurants. My plan was to go to Target, Best Buy, Walmart, and maybe a couple of other stores. Most of these were within a mile of each other or so. When I got to Target, I saw that it was very busy. There were people everywhere. I was able to navigate my way to the things that I wanted, but it took a while to get up to the checkout area and complete the purchase. I remember that among the crowd of people, I noticed this guy who had a really tall spiked mohawk, and the rest of his head was bald. It was hard to miss because he was also pretty tall. I finished shopping at Target and then went to Walmart. Now, Walmart was just as busy, if not busier, than Target was. I once again went through the crowd of people through the store to find the items that I wanted. As I was near the back end of the store, I happened to notice the mohawk guy again. I found this interesting, but a coincidence. There were a lot of stores in the area, so it wouldn't be strange at all to see some of the same people at different ones.
After I was at Walmart, I went to Best Buy. This store, like the others, was crowded and people were everywhere. And within probably 10 minutes of being inside, I saw the guy with the mohawk here as well. I was over by the laptops and computers, which was at the right side of the store, and he was maybe 30 feet away in the same area. I noticed that he was looking at me. Maybe he recognized me from the same 3 stores and thought it was a coincidence too. But when I looked over at him, he looked away quickly and sort of went out of sight. I got kind of suspicious and decided to go to the far opposite end of the store. For the first time that night, I was really paying attention to my surroundings and not just to finding things that I wanted to buy. I was way over near the appliances now, like refrigerators and those kind of things. This side of the store was significantly less crowded than the other side. Within a minute of being on that side, the guy with the mohawk showed up. I tried to pay attention to him without making it obvious. He didn't seem to be there with anybody and was just kind of standing around. I was getting more and more paranoid every second. I walked back towards the laptops again at the other end of the store. Once again, the man went to the area. He was even farther away this time, but he was still there. I would lose him in the crowd for a few seconds, but always saw him again with his distinct hair. Had he been following me the entire night? I wondered if that was the case, and if so, when he started following me. At that point, I'd gotten most of the things that I went out to get, and it was just after midnight. I wanted to go shopping with my mom the next morning, so I decided to call it a night. I checked out at Best Buy and then left the store. I parked at the back of the parking lot because of how busy it was, and when I was walking to my car and was about halfway there, I looked behind me. I saw the guy with the mohawk was now leaving the store. I walked faster and got to my car and then locked the doors. I felt much safer now and started driving home. There were a lot of other cars out, and it took me a few seconds to exit the parking lot. When I finally made it onto a road, the second I turned, I saw an older-looking pickup truck pull out right behind me. In my mirror, I immediately noticed the hair. It was the same guy, and he was now following me in his truck. I had a terrible feeling. I really didn't know what to do. I continued to drive home, which was maybe a 10-minute drive. As I was driving, the guy was following me at a pretty close distance in his truck. I took out my phone and called my mom. Thankfully, she was still awake. I told her that some guy was following me in his truck and I didn't know what to do. My dad was still awake too, and he was also listening. He got on the phone and told me not to drive home, but gave me a location sort of near our house and told me to drive around that area. He then said he was getting in his truck and leaving. I did what he said, and by the time I got there, almost 10 minutes later, my dad was already there. I pulled onto one street, and my dad pulled out right behind the truck in his. My dad tailed the guy and started honking his horn repeatedly. At the next street, the mohawk guy suddenly turned off, and my dad followed him. My dad then called me and told me to go home and said the guy was speeding away. He and I then drove home, and when we got there, the mohawk guy was long gone. I still don't know where the guy started to follow me, or why he was following me. I don't recommend anybody to do what my dad did, because we didn't really know if the guy could have been dangerous. Either way, I'm hoping nothing like this ever happens again. This happened on Black Friday about 5 years ago. I was a young 19-year-old woman in my second year of college. I lived pretty close to my school, so I was able to work at a nearby clothing store which was in a pretty big shopping center. I was scheduled to work on Black Friday, which I had done the year before. I knew it would be a long shift and really busy, but I also knew I was getting paid extra, so it was worth it. I got to work early on the morning of Black Friday. We opened at 6 a.m. and I was there. The store I worked at was pretty big, so we had a lot of people working. I was mainly a cashier, but I would also do other tasks as well. As I was working at the cash register shortly after we opened, a man came and checked out in my line. He was middle-aged and bald, and I remember he had a missing tooth in the front. As he was standing there, I could feel him just staring at me the whole time. Then he complimented me on my outfit and seemed to give off a bit of a creepy feeling, but I was nice to him and knew it was just part of the job. After that, he left. About an hour later, I moved from cashier to working in the women's department. As I was folding some clothes, I noticed the man once again. We were pretty busy, not enough where people were lined up outside or anything, but we were much busier than any other day. So I found it strange how I saw the same man once again about an hour later. But the part that I really didn't like is how I caught him just staring at me once again. When we made eye contact, he quickly looked away. It was as if he was almost hiding behind a rack of clothes. I did my best to mind my own business, and eventually the man was gone. About 10 minutes later, the man came back. I was still folding clothes and in the same area, but this time the man actually approached me. He asked me what I was doing after work. I didn't really give him an answer, I just said I don't know. He then asked if I would go with him. I told him no, sorry, and then he grabbed onto my arm. He said we should just leave. This really took me by surprise, and I kind of yelled a little bit. I told him to stop grabbing me. At that point, there were a few people that noticed, and the man let go of me. He then walked away really fast. After that, I told a coworker, but the man was nowhere to be seen, so I thought he would be gone for good. But later on, probably 5 hours later, I saw him again, and he was staring at me. I was sure by now that the man was stalking me or something, and I was kind of concerned he would follow me when I left. I was getting off in about an hour, and I just hoped I wouldn't see the man when I was done. And I didn't, until 10 minutes before I was off when I noticed him. I got a coworker to walk out to my car with me. The man didn't follow me, which was a huge relief, and I drove home. I got home, and thankfully the man didn't follow me. However, that night, I was awoken to a knocking at my front door. I lived with my parents at the time, but I knew it wasn't them or my younger brother because they were all asleep. I laid there confused at first, until I remembered the man who had been stalking me at the store. Then I got a really creepy feeling. I didn't want to get up or even look out the window. Thankfully, I heard the sound of my brother leaving his bedroom. He said out loud he wondered who was knocking on the door at this hour as he walked. It was 2 a.m., and I guess my brother had still been up, most likely playing video games. I heard him get closer to the door, and at that point, I left my room to go over and join him in seeing who was there. As I did, my brother said to me there was nobody there. He then opened the door and stepped out. He looked around and picked up something off the ground, and then came back inside. Once inside, I saw he was holding an envelope. He opened it up and pulled out 2 Polaroid pictures. One of them was of my bedroom window, and the other was of the store that I worked at. When I realized this, I just about had a heart attack. I explained the man to my brother, and I'm 100% sure he's the one who left the envelope. We both woke up my parents, and the police were called. I ended up filling out a report and answering several questions. I got the next few weeks off work, and to my surprise, the next day the man was found at the store once again and caught. I was working at Target on Black Friday 2 years in a row. I worked at Target when I was a young woman aged 19 to 21. This was a while ago now, and I recall that we opened at 6 p.m. on Thanksgiving night. I remember when I first heard that, I thought they were crazy. Nobody wants to work on Thanksgiving, and I didn't think that people wanted to go shopping on Thanksgiving either. They should be with their families. I remember that beforehand I said that, and my manager said that we would all spend time with our work family. I thought that was cheesy, but to be honest, it did end up being kind of fun working on Thanksgiving. Plus, I got paid time and a half. The first year went pretty smooth. We had tons of employees working, and I was at the checkouts most of the time as a cashier. The second year, I knew more of what to expect. I was working basically almost an overnight shift this time, from 6 p.m. to 3 a.m. We stayed open all night, and 3 a.m. was a really weird time to get off, as I had only worked until midnight the previous year. I wondered how busy the store would be in those overnight hours. And spoiler alert, it was busy. Very busy. I remember all of us cashiers got to our check lanes before the store opened at 6 p.m. We were using every single lane, and I mean every one. From the time we opened at 6 o'clock, I saw the large crowd of people enter the store. Some of them were even running. Very quickly, people mostly went to the electronics department, and before long, there were customers entering all the checkout lines, including my own. I got busy ringing up customer after customer. It went by pretty fast just because of how busy we were. I remember that at one point, a sort of distinct-looking man came to my checkout. I don't remember what he got, but he had glasses, short dark hair, and was wearing a blue jacket. Things went normal, and I only remembered him because he checked out in my line again like an hour later. I was like, wait, didn't this guy check out in my line before? I didn't say anything though, and soon he was gone again. As I kept working, soon it got later and later. The store remained just as busy as people were literally everywhere. It was a steady flow of people through my checkout.
Then, maybe 2 hours later, the man was in my line again. I remember he asked me how my night was going and what time I got off. I dismissed it as friendly chit-chat and answered him. I mentioned how I had seen him before, and he simply said something like, "I have a lot of shopping to do." I was just like, "Oh, okay," but I didn't think until later how it didn't make much sense. Why not get all the stuff at once? And why was he always in my line, as there were literally almost 30 others to choose from? Soon though, I sort of forgot about it as I checked out other customers. Then it was time for my break. I went to the front of the store and through the employees-only doors towards the break room. There was a number of other people in there, including my best friend at work, another girl named Kayla, who was around my age. I sat next to her and talked with her about how her shift was going. Kayla was not a cashier, but worked in the sales floor, mainly in soft lines. She told me that it was crazy out on the floor. Then she said that there was this creepy guy who she had reported. Apparently, a guy came up to her and started talking to her, asking her where stuff was. She helped him at first, but then he started asking her weird questions and wouldn't let her go away. He kept asking her stuff and sort of following her around. His questions got inappropriate, and she went over to a manager and reported the guy. She said that when she went to report him, he ran away, and was not sure if he had left the store or if he was still in there. It was hard to know because the store was literally packed, and Targets are also pretty large. I felt bad for Kayla to deal with such a creep. It reminded me of the man I kept seeing in the check lane. When I told her about him, we asked each other what the guy looked like, and we realized that it was the same guy. I now felt even more weirded out by this man. I hoped that I would not see him again, and that he would not go through my line anymore. Soon after, I went back out, as well as Kayla. I only had a few hours left, as did she. So I continued with checking out customers. About another hour later, I saw the man once more. He was in my line, but it wasn't his turn yet. I was at a different check lane now, but here he was, in my line once again. As soon as I saw him, our eyes locked for a moment. He must have sensed the different look on my face now that I knew he was a creep. I thought that the managers might be looking for him after he harassed Kayla. So I took out my walkie and I radioed in, "Can I get a GSTL to check lane 20? As soon as I said that, I saw the guy leave his place in line and start quickly walking away. By the time the manager got to me, the guy was long gone. I reported what happened, and the manager was trying to find the guy, but obviously had 100 other things to do as well. It was a crazy night with all the shoppers. There was shoplifting to worry about and just general tasks. And any other night, this guy would have been kicked out of the store already. My manager said that he would look for the guy and walked off in the direction that he went. I hoped that he would find him, but I didn't get my hopes up too much. I was just glad that he was out of my line, and I continued with my work. For the last few hours of my shift, I didn't see the guy. The store stayed very busy into the wee hours of the morning. At 3 a.m., the store was still packed, which was a crazy sight. I was finally done though, and I went up, clocked out, and then left. I started walking to my car at the back end of the parking lot. As I was about halfway there, I noticed a car come up behind me driving the same way that I was walking. I moved over to let it pass. When I did, the car did not go past me as I had expected, so I turned around and looked at it. When I did, my jaw about dropped as I saw the same creepy man behind the wheel. It was this old beat-up car, and the guy was staring at me through those big glasses. I walked faster and hurried to get to my car. When I got there, I went inside and locked the doors and felt a little safer. But the man in his car drove up and parked in a spot like 2 spaces away from me. I realized then that he was probably waiting for me to leave. Then what would happen? Would he follow me? I figured that he probably would, so I decided not to leave just yet. We both sat in our cars for like 5 minutes. I was on my phone texting Kayla as well as the Target group chat. I told them about the creepy guy, but Kayla didn't respond right away because she was still working. Not knowing what else to do, I decided to go back in the store. I got out of my car and then quickly walked towards the entrance. The man did not get out of his car or follow me. He stayed there. I went inside Target, just walked around for a while, and talked to a few coworkers. Then I came across my coworker David, who was a cart attendant. He was helping a customer with the TV, and when he heard about the guy, he said that he would come out and see what his problem was. David was a big guy, and as a cart attendant, he worked out in the parking lot all the time. So after he finished helping a customer, he left the store with me. We both walked out to my car, and the man was still there waiting for me to leave. David made a beeline going straight for him. He walked right up to the guy's driver's window and knocked on it. I saw the man in the car look super uncomfortable. David was basically pounding on the guy's window, demanding he roll it down. I remember David was calling him a scumbag and stuff. He was like, "Hey scumbag, roll down your window, I gotta talk to you." When the insults started, the man went into action. The
The guy quickly put his car into drive and just sped away, quickly leaving the Target. I was glad that he was gone. David was like, "I don't know why he didn't want to talk to me." I thanked him for his help, and then I left and went home. I never saw that guy again, but it still creeps me out knowing that he might have followed me home. Earlier in the night, I had told him what time I was getting off that night and things like that. I hadn't known that the man was acting creepy towards Kayla and maybe even others. Overall, that was the craziest Black Friday that I worked at Target. It's a tradition for me to go Black Friday shopping every year with my best friend. We usually start at night on Thanksgiving and go for hours, sometimes all night. A few years back, we had several stores in mind that we wanted to go to. The first of which was a very large and popular store. We arrived shortly before they opened and saw a pretty decent sized line in front of the doors with tons of people waiting to get inside. When the store finally opened, people ran inside and packed the place. We walked inside and saw people literally everywhere, like a giant mob was running around the store. The most people were in the electronics section, but there were literally people everywhere. It was quite the sight to see. The store was getting pretty rowdy too. We witnessed 2 people get into an argument, as well as 2 other people shouting random things. We even saw a guy who was wearing a clown mask. All of that in the span of about 10 minutes. We went to go look at the things that we wanted, which were new Fitbits that were on sale. As we were looking at the Fitbits, we saw the guy in the clown mask walk over to us about 10 feet away and just stare at us. There were a lot of people between us, but we could see that he was directly looking at us, and if we moved a little bit, his head would move a little bit as well. We decided to get the Fitbits and then walk to another part of the electronics, and when we did, we noticed that the clown man seemed to be following us. He was wearing normal clothes, a sweatshirt and jeans, but the mask was one of the creepier ones that I had seen. We just ignored him the whole time and kept shopping, but he was starting to bother us with how obvious he was being that he was following us. My friend suggested that we go to the complete opposite end of the store, and so we did. The clown man followed us the whole way there too. It got really annoying, so I went up to him and asked him to stop following us. But when I did, he didn't seem to care at all. In fact, when I stepped closer towards him, he jumped away as if I was dangerous or something. By this point, we were ready to be done with that store and head to another one. We were kind of afraid that the clown mask guy would follow us out of the store, but figured he probably wouldn't. We checked out, which took us a while because of the long lines, and as we waited, the clown man stood at the end of the checkouts just staring at us. The store was so busy that none of the workers seemed to really notice or care. After all, there had been a near fight with some other people. Finally, when we were done checking out, we walked to the exits. When we got out the front door, the clown guy followed us right out. We decided to just keep ignoring him and walk to our car. He followed us all the way there, and when we arrived at the car, he stood about 20 feet back. Then, an SUV pulled up to the clown man, and he got into the back seat. We were a little bit confused, but overall relieved to see him get into a car. That is, until we looked into the windows of the car he got into, and saw at least 3 other people, all wearing different creepy clown masks, including the driver. We got into our vehicle as fast as we could and started it. Their SUV just sat in the middle of the parking lot lane with the engine running. As soon as we left, they followed. They followed us extremely close as we tried to leave the parking lot. Traffic was pretty busy because of Black Friday, and we knew we would have to try to lose them. They followed us right out of the parking lot. They followed us right out of the parking lot and down the road. We went towards another road that led to more stores, including a mall. We had to stop at a 4-way stop sign that had lines of cars at each direction. When it was our turn to go, we knew this was good because the clown would have to wait for their turn. But instead of waiting, they drove directly behind us and nearly caused an accident with multiple cars honking at them as they sped through the intersection. This really creeped us out to see the level of dedication they were taking just to follow us. But shortly after the both of us crossed the intersection, we heard a siren and saw flashing lights behind us. Luckily for us, a cop had been one of the cars in line at the intersection.
We pulled over to the side of the road, but the clowns did not and sped by us as well as the cops. We watched as the clowns drove forward for a good 10 to 15 seconds before finally pulling over and getting stopped by the police. We took this opportunity to turn around and drive the complete opposite direction. We didn't see those clowns again for the rest of the night.
Several years ago, I went Black Friday shopping at Walmart. There were several locations near where I lived, and most of them opened at 6 p.m. on Thanksgiving night. I looked at their ad, and I knew of several items that were on sale that I was interested in. The ones I wanted most were electronics. Several video games caught my eye, a laptop, and possibly a TV. I wasn't desperate to get these things, but if I was able to get a great deal, I would do it. I went by myself because nobody else in my family wanted to go shopping on Thanksgiving night and would rather go the next day. I only planned to go to Walmart and was going to go back home afterwards. When I got there, a little after 6, the parking lot was already packed. I had never seen so many cars there before. I really had no interest in standing in a line or running through the store to get stuff like I had seen on some videos of crazy Black Friday shopping. After I parked my car and got inside the store, it was way more crazy than I thought it would be though. It was just like the videos that I had seen. People were literally everywhere. I was getting bumped into by people left and right just after entering the store. More and more people were coming in behind me as well. I quickly realized just getting anything would be difficult. I saw people holding TVs over their heads, and others were literally trying to sprint through the store. Right after seeing all of this, I decided that maybe I should just leave and come back in the morning when things weren't so crazy. I was kind of getting pushed by the wave of people deeper into the store. I walked around through the crowd and finally found an aisle with some walking room. I walked more through the store a bit, but everywhere I went seemed to be extremely crowded. The whole place seemed like complete chaos. I slowly made my way against the crowd, trying to get back to the exit. It took me a while, but eventually I was able to get back outside. I walked back out to my car and went inside before realizing that my wallet was gone. Immediately, my heart sank. I had no idea what had happened, if somebody stole it or if it fell out of my pocket or something. I thought it was unlikely that it fell out and more likely that somebody stole it. I knew that it was in my right side pocket of my pants where I always kept it. When I was in the store, I had bumped into so many people that really anybody probably could have pickpocketed me. Even if it had somehow just fallen out of my pocket, the chances of it still being on the ground without somebody picking it up were slim. Still, I needed to give it a chance, so I went back into the Walmart to look around and see. I walked through the mob of people, looking down at the ground for my wallet. I tried my best to retrace my steps, but never found anything. After that, I decided to go to the service desk and ask if somebody had found it and turned it in. I knew this was a really long shot, and it took probably 15 minutes just to get there and be able to talk to anybody. But when I did, they said they didn't have any lost wallets, and I left the store disappointed. I got back inside my car and tried to think about what possibly had happened. I went on my phone to freeze my credit and debit cards that I had in my wallet. Just then, my phone started to ring. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered the call anyways. There was a man on the other end, and he sounded very friendly. He said that he had found a wallet in Walmart, and he thought it belonged to me, and I was lucky that he found it because he wanted to give it back to me tonight. I felt extremely lucky by this, and was super happy that somebody had found my wallet and actually wanted to give it back. I asked if they were still near the Walmart, but they said no. The man on the other end of the phone said that I should come by and pick it up, and he wasn't that far away. He said we could meet outside of his house, and asked if he could text me the address. I said sure, and after he texted it to me, the man said that he would see me soon, and hung up. I was still just super relieved that I was going to get my wallet back. I put the address into my phone, and then left Walmart to go there. It took maybe about 10 minutes to get to the location. It took me in the opposite direction of where I lived, and the roads went from busy to quiet and more isolated. I turned onto a road covered by woods on both sides. Now I was very close to the location, but I was getting a little bit creeped out. I wasn't really seeing any houses at all. The area just seemed like woods or maybe a park. I kept driving and eventually arrived. It definitely was not somebody's house. It looked like an isolated park in the middle of the woods. I hadn't seen another car in a long time either. I parked my car and texted the guy that I was there. I then questioned if I was at the correct location. I got a response saying that I was, and I was then told to walk into the forest. By this point, I knew something was wrong, and I wasn't going to be stupid enough to actually walk into the forest. Still, I was curious. I stood outside my car, observing the area. It was really dark, and I really couldn't see much. It was also very quiet. Then, I heard a noise coming from inside the woods. I got a little scared, but I guess it could have just been an animal, like a squirrel. I texted the number again, asking why I was supposed to walk into the forest, and I thought that I was meeting at the guy's house. After I sent the text, I heard a quiet ding noise coming from inside the woods. When I heard that, I got back inside my car immediately. Getting my wallet back wasn't worth it. After I was inside my car, I turned my headlights on. This revealed what appeared to be a man peeking out from behind a tree in the woods. He then ducked back behind it. I sped out of there, and when I got home, I froze all of the cards that had been in my wallet. Luckily, I only had like $20 in cash in there, but I did need to get a new driver's license. I went to my bank the next morning and was able to get another card. Overall, I don't know who stole my card or how, but I'm glad I didn't go into the woods. I'm also much more careful when I go shopping, especially on Black Friday. On Black Friday of 2016, I went to Walmart to see the deals that they had. There were a number of things that I was interested in getting. Nothing too big like a TV, but a few small things and some Christmas gifts for people. I went there at about midnight, and the store was pretty busy. It was really weird to see a store that crowded at midnight. I looked around, but it was tough to get around the store with it being so crowded. At one point, I was back by the doors to the back room. They had a little window in them, and I randomly was just looking through it to the back rooms. As I did, I noticed someone walking into the back, but they were not a Walmart worker. They wore a ski mask and all black. I thought it had to be some sort of joke or something. There was a worker standing nearby, so I decided to let him know. I told him there was a guy in the back wearing a ski mask. He looked surprised and then asked me to show him where he was. I pointed in the window, and he opened the door and asked me where. We both went inside the back room. It got a lot quieter back there, as there were finally no crowds. I looked in the direction that the man went, and I explained that he was walking that way. Just as I took a few steps in that direction, I felt someone grab me from behind and cover my eyes with their hand. They seemed to be wearing gloves. Then I felt someone else grab my legs, and next thing I knew, I was being picked up by at least 2 people. They carried me a little ways, and then dropped me into what felt like one of those big garbage cans on wheels. I fell onto a bag of garbage. I looked up and saw 2 men in ski masks. They started pushing me and told me to shut up. I wondered how this was going on with no employees seeing this. I couldn't see much, but I saw that we were passing by an open door leading to outside. I don't know what got into me, but at that moment, I felt there was something I had to do. So I jumped against the side, causing the garbage can that I was in to tip over. I fell out of it and got up and began running. I felt the men right on my heels, and once I made it out the door, I took a left for the front end of the store. We were at the side where there was no people, so I ran as fast as I could, and once I made it back to the front, the men stopped chasing me. I ran straight to my car and drove all the way home. Once there, I called the police. I know I should have called them sooner, but my mind was racing, and I was just desperate to get back home where I felt safe. By the time I called, however, I was told there had been other calls about the men in ski masks at that Walmart. I don't know what those men were up to, but I'm so happy I was able to get away. A few years ago, I went Black Friday shopping. Originally, I had just planned on going to the mall on actual Black Friday in the morning with my mom. However, there were a couple of things on sale that I wanted to get people for Christmas gifts, and I thought they might sell out by the next day. I decided to go Black Friday shopping on my own on Thanksgiving night, and then go again with my mom the next day. My parents and I were at family's house for Thanksgiving, and after we got home, I left to go shopping at about 10 p.m. I went to the nearby shopping center that had pretty much all of the popular stores and restaurants. My plan was to go to Target, Best Buy, Walmart, and maybe a couple of other stores. Most of these were within a mile of each other or so. When I got to Target, I saw that it was very busy. There were people everywhere. I was able to navigate my way to the things that I wanted, but it took a while to get up to the checkout area and complete the purchase.
I remember that among the crowd of people, I noticed this guy who had a really tall spiked mohawk, and the rest of his head was bald. It was hard to miss because he was also pretty tall. I finished shopping at Target and then went to Walmart. Now, Walmart was just as busy, if not busier, than Target was. I once again went through the crowd of people through the store to find the items that I wanted. As I was near the back end of the store, I happened to notice the mohawk guy again. I found this interesting, but a coincidence. There were a lot of stores in the area, so it wouldn't be strange at all to see some of the same people at different ones. After I was at Walmart, I went to Best Buy. This store, like the others, was crowded and people were everywhere. And within probably 10 minutes of being inside, I saw the guy with the mohawk here as well. I was over by the laptops and computers, which was at the right side of the store, and he was maybe 30 feet away in the same area. I noticed that he was looking at me. Maybe he recognized me from the same 3 stores and thought it was a coincidence too. But when I looked over at him, he looked away quickly and sort of went out of sight. I got kind of suspicious and decided to go to the far opposite end of the store. For the first time that night, I was really paying attention to my surroundings and not just to finding things that I wanted to buy. I was way over near the appliances now, like refrigerators and those kind of things. This side of the store was significantly less crowded than the other side. Within a minute of being on that side, the guy with the mohawk showed up. I tried to pay attention to him without making it obvious. He didn't seem to be there with anybody and was just kind of standing around. I was getting more and more paranoid every second. I walked back towards the laptops again at the other end of the store. Once again, the man went to the area. He was even farther away this time, but he was still there. I would lose him in the crowd for a few seconds, but always saw him again with his distinct hair. Had he been following me the entire night? I wondered if that was the case, and if so, when he started following me. At that point, I'd gotten most of the things that I went out to get, and it was just after midnight. I wanted to go shopping with my mom the next morning, so I decided to call it a night. I checked out at Best Buy and then left the store. I parked at the back of the parking lot because of how busy it was, and when I was walking to my car and was about halfway there, I looked behind me. I saw the guy with the mohawk was now leaving the store. I walked faster and got to my car and then locked the doors. I felt much safer now and started driving home. There were a lot of other cars out, and it took me a few seconds to exit the parking lot. When I finally made it onto a road, the second I turned, I saw an older-looking pickup truck pull out right behind me. In my mirror, I immediately noticed the hair. It was the same guy, and he was now following me in his truck. I had a terrible feeling. I really didn't know what to do. I continued to drive home, which was maybe a 10-minute drive. As I was driving, the guy was following me at a pretty close distance in his truck. I took out my phone and called my mom. Thankfully, she was still awake. I told her that some guy was following me in his truck and I didn't know what to do. My dad was still awake too, and he was also listening. He got on the phone and told me not to drive home, but gave me a location sort of near our house and told me to drive around that area. He then said he was getting in his truck and leaving. I did what he said, and by the time I got there, almost 10 minutes later, my dad was already there. I pulled onto one street, and my dad pulled out right behind the truck in his. My dad tailed the guy and started honking his horn repeatedly. At the next street, the mohawk guy suddenly turned off, and my dad followed him. My dad then called me and told me to go home and said the guy was speeding away. He and I then drove home, and when we got there, the mohawk guy was long gone. I still don't know where the guy started to follow me, or why he was following me. I don't recommend anybody to do what my dad did, because we didn't really know if the guy could have been dangerous. Either way, I'm hoping nothing like this ever happens again.
Many years ago, I used to work at an electronics store that would get really busy on Black Friday. For most of the year, the store would not be very busy at all. It was a smaller place, and many of them were in malls. Our location was not inside of a mall, but was part of a strip mall. So most of the time, we would really only have 1 or 2 employees working, and wouldn't get that many customers at once. There were a few days though where we needed more, such as certain weekend sales, the Christmas season, and of course, Black Friday. We opened that year on Black Friday very early in the morning. I don't recall if it was 5 a.m., 6, or 7, but it was earlier than usual. I was opening the store along with 3 other employees. The setup of the store was basically items all along the walls, with a few display tables and more things for sale on them. There was also a couple of shelves, but not very many. Then we had our employee desk that had just 2 registers on it, and then there was a small backroom area in the store as well. We had put up a line divider thing to make there be an organized line of people waiting to check out, and then we had both registers open. The other 2 employees would be out in the store helping customers and doing whatever else was needed as the other 2 rang people up. When we opened, we got a lot of customers pretty much right away. Our store was having a major sale. The crowds were not overwhelming, but were significant. For the first couple of hours, I was one of the employees working at the register and checking out customers. Then I was assigned to help customers inside of the store. The time went by really fast because I was kept pretty busy. I remember that at one point though, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a man walking into our back room. That space was for employees only, and normally the door was always locked, but it must have been left unlocked because this guy had just walked right in. I made my way over there to tell the guy that he couldn't be back there, but it took a little bit longer than usual because of how crowded the store was. I soon got back there though and entered the back room. It was a very small area but kind of cluttered. There were 2 doors leading to the store, one that I had just walked through and the other leading to behind the desk where the employees were. There was also an exit door that led out to the back of the building. After entering the back room, I did not see the guy anywhere. I was confused at first, and I called out asking if anybody was there. After getting no response, I figured that the guy must have left out the back door. That made me worried that he might have stole some stuff. I looked around and did not see anything that was obviously stolen from the back though, so I went back out into the store and was going to try to find out if anything was stolen there. I found another employee, and I told my coworker Jeff about what had happened. He told me that I should go into the back room and check to make sure nothing was stolen, and he would make sure nothing was stolen from the sales floor. So I started to make my way over there, and that's when I saw the back door opening again. The same man started to walk out, but then he noticed me and he went back in the room and closed the door. I walked as fast as I could through the crowd to get back over to the room again. I was able to make it within about a minute and get inside, but when I did, once more I didn't see the guy in there. I called out again and once more got no response. I could not figure out where this guy was hiding or if he had left the store. I started to look around and check if anything was stolen. I went to the far end of the narrow back room and began looking at the items there. As I was doing so, I suddenly felt that somebody was behind me. I turned around to see the man standing there, now slowly walking towards me. I had no idea where he came from. He was a big guy, larger than me, and his face was nearly expressionless. I was concerned and did not know what he wanted. Seeing him back there totally took me by surprise. After a few moments, the only words I could get out were, "What are you doing back here?" He did not say anything, but kept walking towards me. Just then, the other door to the back opened, the one that led from behind the counter. My coworker Jeff was there, and he called out telling the man that he could not be in the back room. The man saw him, stopped for a moment, and then bolted for the back door. He ran out and left the building completely. I was glad that he was finally gone. He also did not appear to have stolen anything. We went over and checked, and nothing was missing. We also realized that the man must have been hiding behind some boxes that were back there. I had never looked in that particular area. I really don't know what that man's intentions were, but it was very creepy to say the least.
I used to work at Target when I was younger. I worked there for about a year and had to work during a Black Friday. During that time, we actually opened on Thanksgiving night, I believe at 6 o'clock p.m. Just about all of the Target employees were scheduled to work that night, it seemed. Target was going to stay open all night and then again the next day on Friday. We were expecting to get tons and tons of shoppers, and many deals were going on throughout the store. It was an experience like no other. I usually worked in the store as a sales associate and sometimes a cashier if they needed me. When I got there a short time before we opened, I had to park towards the far back corner of the parking lot, and we had a huge parking lot. I had never seen it so full. As I approached the store, I saw a line of at least 100 people waiting to be let inside. To that point, I had never gone shopping on Thanksgiving before, just in the early morning on the actual Black Friday. I was let in through an employee-only entrance, and then I clocked into work. I saw so many other employees, or team members as we called each other. There was a short meeting beforehand, and then some of the managers went over to unlock the doors. I started out the first hour as a cashier, and when the doors opened, I watched from my check lane as people came pouring in. They mostly ran to the electronics area, and soon, people were coming to all of the check lanes. We had just about every single check lane open, and I was busy ringing people up for the first couple of hours. I was only working until midnight, so it was not that bad of a shift. And because it was 6 hours, I would get a 30-minute break at one point. After 3 hours of being at the check lanes, at 9 p.m., a manager came and told me that it was time for my break. I turned off the light to my check lane and then headed past the many people inside and over to the break room. When I got inside, I sat down at a table and pulled out my phone. I had several texts and Snapchats from friends. One in particular stood out though. There was a text from a number that I didn't recognize. I was very good at having names stored on my phone as everybody that I texted or called, so I knew who it was. The text from this unknown person said, "When you're on your break, meet me at the back of the store." I responded by asking who it was. Then I responded to all the other texts and snaps from various friends. Whoever had texted me before responded again, telling me to just come to the back of the store. I was really curious, but I had no idea who this was. I had several of my coworkers' numbers, and they were stored on my phone with their names. It was possible that it was another coworker, but why wouldn't they just tell me? I actually left the break room and decided to go to the back of the store to see who it was. What part of the back of the store I was supposed to go to, though, was not clear. Target is a large store, and the back can refer to quite a bit of space. I made my way through the large crowd of shoppers. On the way to the back, even though I took my name tag off, I was asked by about 5 people about things. Some asked where products were. Others asked me if certain things were still in stock or on sale. At last, I made it to the back of the store. I walked along it and didn't see anybody that I knew, and nobody waved at me or approached. I went back to the break room after that for the remainder of my break. Towards the end of it, the number texted me again. The new text said, "I saw you. It was too busy, and I will catch up with you after work at midnight." I wasn't sure who this was still, and I didn't know how they knew when I got off. I texted them again, asking who this was. Then I went back to work. After I went back to work, I was moved to the sales floor from the check lanes. As I worked, I was able to check my phone a couple of times, but I didn't get a response from whoever it was that had been texting me. Soon, I forgot all about it and was very busy with work. For the next few hours, I did various things, and it remained extremely busy the entire time. By the time it was almost midnight, things were a little bit more calm, but still very busy. In that entire time, I didn't notice anybody that was strange or looking at me. I helped quite a few customers, but none of them stood out as possibly being the one who had texted me. When it was 12 o'clock, I was finally done for the night. I walked to the employees' hallway and clocked out. Then I left the busy store and walked out into the parking lot. There was still lots of cars all around. However, the area where I parked was slightly more open now. As I walked through the parking lot to my vehicle, I felt my phone vibrate. I took it out of my pocket and looked. There was a text from the same number from earlier. In the new text, whoever it was said they were waiting by my car. I was almost halfway there and could barely see my car from where I was. I noticed that directly next to my car on the other side was an SUV. As I kept walking closer, I got a little bit better view of it. I could see that the engine to the SUV was running, but couldn't tell who was inside. I had a really bad feeling about it and decided to turn around. Then I went back inside Target. When I got back inside, I went straight to the break room, and there were a few other people in there. I was going to maybe text my parents and ask one of them to come pick me up or something, but one of my best friends at work, Lexi, was in the break room. I walked over to her and told her about what was happening. She said that somebody had asked her about me earlier when she was working. A man had apparently approached her and claimed to be a good friend of mine. He asked her for my number, and she had no reason not to believe that he didn't really know me, so she gave it to him. She said that he was tall, thin, had a slight beard, and shorter, dark-colored hair. From what she said, it didn't sound like anybody that I knew. After a few more minutes talking to her, one of the security people we had working that night came into the break room. When I saw him, I told him about my situation and asked him to go out to my car with me. He agreed, and when we left the store, The car was still parked next to mine. We walked closer, and when we made it within 50 feet or so of the car, it drove away. I was able to get to my car safely and then carefully drove home, making sure that I wasn't followed. There was a lot of other cars around, going to Target and other nearby stores, so if the guy wanted to follow me, it would have been pretty tough. But he didn't. I was really glad to make it back safe. When I got home, I saw that I had another text from him. He called me a curse word, and then I blocked his number. That made for a very memorable Black Friday. That guy must have seen me working earlier in the night, and maybe even one of my previous shifts at Target. He must have got my name from my name tag, and then told Lexi that he was my friend, and then got my number from her. I'm guessing he found out what time I got off and what car was mine, possibly from other coworkers. It really creeps me out to think about it. Luckily, though, I never saw him again after that.
This happened back in the year 2007. It was Black Friday, and I had been excited to go shopping. On Thanksgiving, I was looking at all the advertisements. Black Friday had become a tradition for me to go shopping and buy stuff. I wasn't that crazy about it where I would fight people to be first in line, but I enjoyed getting good deals if I could. Back then, I was pretty big into gaming, so I planned on going to GameStop at some point. So I woke up early that morning, and my first stop was Circuit City, where I bought a new TV. Then I went to a couple of other stores before winding up at GameStop. There wasn't a specific deal that I wanted to get there, but I was more so just looking around. The GameStop that I went to was located next to a bunch of other stores in a common shopping area. However, it was kind of on the end. When I got to the GameStop, it was very busy. If you've been to a GameStop, you know that there's not that much space to begin with. The stores are generally pretty small, and this one was like most. People were all over the place, and it was kind of hard to get around in there. I was just browsing, looking at the deals sort of near the back. I had been there for maybe 10 minutes when I heard a commotion at the front of the store. I wasn't really paying attention until I heard yelling. I looked over and just about everybody in the store was looking towards the front. By the counter, there was a GameStop employee yelling at a guy to get out of the store. The man was tall, thin, with long hair and glasses. He was not backing down as the GameStop employee was yelling over and over. He kept saying, "Get out of my store, now!" The guy would not leave though, and he was saying stuff back to the guy, but I couldn't hear it. I could only really hear the employee yelling because he was yelling super loud. I heard him threaten to call the cops and stuff. Some other customers tried to get between them, and it was pretty intense. People were saying to the guy to cool off and just leave, and they were also trying to calm down the GameStop employee, who I think was a manager. Finally, the guy turned and stormed out of the GameStop. He was stomping his feet along the way, and then when he left, he slammed the door super hard. But then, the crazy part is that he opened the door back up again like 2 seconds after slamming it. As soon as he did, the GameStop employee screamed at him to get out again. But after he said that, the man in the doorway yelled that he would be back. Then he slammed the door again. After that, the place was dead silent for like 10 seconds. You could hear a pin drop. Then, finally, things resumed, and everybody went back to shopping again. I was there for probably another 20 minutes. I found a few things that I wanted to buy, and so then I got in line and waited. Eventually, I bought the games and was about to leave. Literally as I was walking to the door, I saw that same angry customer approaching from the parking lot. I felt like I better back up and get out of his way, so I didn't leave the store immediately. Instead, I stopped and waited. The next thing I knew, I saw the guy take what looked like a hatchet and start swinging it at the door. He hit it a few times and everybody looked over. The window started to break and then it was smashed. The man then went over to the window next to it and swung it at that a bunch of times. Those windows were smashed as well. It was extremely loud and everybody watched in shock. The man then turned and walked off, leaving the scene. We all then looked at the store manager, and the look on his face was pure disbelief. Finally, some people said that they were calling the cops and stuff. Nobody was hurt or anything, thankfully. The cops got there fast, and I remember that the guy ended up being caught not long after. The GameStop had to close for like a week. It was a crazy situation. I'm really glad that I didn't leave right away and run into the guy as he went on his rampage. Who knows what could have happened? I'm not even sure what his dispute with the GameStop manager was about. I heard at one point that he was unhappy about how much in-store credit he was getting for a game he sold them. I don't know if that's true though, but that was a bad way to take out his anger.
I am the owner and manager of a local outdoor supplies store. Every year, like most stores, we get very busy around the holidays, and Black Friday is the busiest day of the year for us. So every year, we hire a few seasonal employees to work the last couple of months. Last year in particular, I really needed to hire some people fast, so I hired 2 people, a woman named Amber and a guy named Alan. They were both pretty good workers. Alan didn't talk much at all, however, and he always seemed a little bit strange, but as long as he did his job, I really didn't care. When Black Friday came, obviously, I needed everybody who worked at the store to be working that day. We opened at 6 a.m., and while we didn't get the same rush that Target or Walmart might get, we still got quite a few customers on that day. The first hours went by very quickly because of how busy we all were. I was doing a little bit of everything, being the owner and manager, and I had somebody at both registers which had long lines the entire time. We were making tons of sales, which meant lots of money, so I was pretty happy. At about 2 p.m., things were still very busy, and I needed to go to the back room of the store to get some items which had recently sold out. Our back room was actually on the left of the store, and I walked over to it and went inside. As soon as I got inside, I heard movements coming from the corner of it as if somebody else was in there. I had just seen most of my workers, so I didn't think any of them would be in there. It was fairly dark, and I walked a little bit farther to where the noise was coming from. Then I saw 4 large men, all dressed in black as well as ski masks, with multiple boxes in their hands. They had the door leading out to the dumpster behind the store open, and I quickly realized that we were being robbed. As soon as they saw me, one of them yelled at me not to move. I was probably about 10 feet away from them, and I didn't know if I would be able to outrun them. Before I could really think about what to do, one of them walked over quickly to me and put his hand on my arm and held me there. I could only watch as they packed the boxes into the car behind the store and took about 2 more trips worth of things. They really knew what to take because they were stealing some of the most valuable things that we had in the store and seemed to know exactly where they were. I couldn't believe this was happening. It was really unbelievable for me. I wish I had some type of silent alarm that I could have used, but we weren't a very high-tech store. Then I heard the door to the back room open coming from the store. When I looked, Alan walked through the door and into the back room. He looked surprised to see what was going on. I was hoping he would run and turn around and call the police, but instead, he stopped in place and looked at me and then walked closer. I was expecting the men to grab him as they did to me, but instead, he walked with the men and out to the back door. They made me go to the back door as well. Then Alan, along with the 4 men, all got into the truck parked behind the store and drove away. I was stunned at what I had just seen. Apparently, Alan was in on the job. It was a relief that they didn't hurt me, and as soon as they left, I called the police. They arrived shortly after and said they would look for the truck. I gave them all of Alan's information that I knew as well. When we looked over the security footage, though, all of the cameras had been shut off, I'm guessing by Alan. None of the men have ever been caught.
This happened many years ago now, but it's something that I will never forget. It was in the early 2000s, and at the time, I was a young single mother with 2 sons aged 7 and 4. There was a new video game system that my sons had been talking about all year, mainly my older son. I was planning to get it for them for Christmas, but I didn't have a whole lot of money to spend. For Black Friday, the local Walmart was having a huge sale, and the video game system was one of the things that was on sale. I knew that it was a great opportunity for me to buy it, and I made plans to go to Walmart. So for Thanksgiving, we stayed at my parents' house, and that allowed me to get up early and go shopping by myself the next day. Walmart opened at 6 a.m. that year on Black Friday, I believe, so I got up before the crack of dawn and drove there. When I arrived, the store had not opened yet, and it was still completely dark outside. However, the parking lot was packed, and I had to park sort of at the back of it. There were people lined up outside the store and walking to the front from the parking lot. I had never seen it like this before. I walked up to the store and got as close as I could, but I was still behind a bunch of people in line. I had only got there about 5 minutes before they opened. Camping out in a tent overnight or something like that wasn't really an option for me.
I hoped that I would still have enough time to get the video games, and I felt confident about it. Soon enough, I remember hearing the crowd cheer and the doors opened. I watched countless people run inside the store and inched closer with the people that I was near. About a minute went by before I was able to enter. By the time I got inside the store, there were literally people everywhere. I remember that the electronics department was at the back of the store, so I tried to walk as quick as I could, but there were so many people that it took forever. By the time I made it there, I looked around for the video games. Unfortunately, they were gone. I looked around the electronics department for at least 10 or 20 minutes. I was just hoping that I would find it or that there would be one somewhere, but it seemed as though it had sold out. Finally, there was an employee available to talk to, and he told me that they didn't have any left. I was very disappointed. I decided to try another store to see if maybe they had a similar deal. I hadn't really looked in all the advertisements in the paper the day before because I had been banking on Walmart to work out. I was surprised just how fast the video games sold. So I left the Walmart store and the mob of people. I walked through the parking lot back to my car. However, when I got near it, I saw something strange. There was a guy with a large SUV and the back of it was open. He was standing there selling electronics out of the back of his car. He was parked at the way back of the parking lot, kind of in the corner where there was actually a little bit of space. I saw a couple of people standing around and talking to him, but there wasn't like a crowd or anything. When I realized this, it seemed kind of shady, but I thought that maybe there was a chance he had the video games that I wanted to buy. So I walked over to him. When I approached, I saw mostly other electronics, but I did see a few video games. When I walked up, he told me that he had stuff cheaper than they were selling inside. I asked him if he had any of the video game systems that I was looking for. He looked in the back of his SUV for a moment, which had a lot of stuff in it. There were boxes and wires and all kinds of stuff back there. He told me that he didn't have any with him at the moment, but he said that he did have some back at his shop, which was not far away. Now, the whole thing seemed sketchy, like I said. I didn't think this guy was supposed to be selling stuff, and Walmart would probably shut him down or call the cops on him. But I was angry for missing out after waking up at 6 a.m., so I didn't really care in the moment. I asked the guy where his shop was and what it was called. He said that it was his place, and he said that he would take me there quick. I was surprised to hear that. I thought maybe he would go back there and come back. I said that I could go to my car and just follow him, but he said no. He said that we could go there quick, and it was just down the road, and then he would drive me back to Walmart. The guy was bald, sort of strong looking, and had a bit of a beard. I told him okay, and then I went around and got into his car. This was a stupid idea to begin with, but at the moment it didn't seem that bad. The man got into the driver's seat and then started driving. He left the Walmart parking lot and turned onto a dark and quiet road. I told the man how crazy it was inside the store and how I really wanted to get the video games for my son. He said that he had several gaming systems and he would sell it to me for cheaper than the sale at Walmart. Aside from it seeming really sketchy, the guy did seem pretty nice. Things then went quiet in the car for the most part. He drove down that road and then turned. It was still dark out and I wasn't quite sure exactly where we were going. After we were driving down that road for at least more than 5 minutes, I started to get nervous. The guy made it sound like his shop wasn't that far away. After driving down the road for a while, he turned again. Then we went down that road for at least another 5 minutes. I no longer knew where we were anymore. I asked the guy how much farther away his place was. He just said that it wasn't much farther. Then he turned on this one road that was even quieter. I was getting a bad feeling that I should not have gotten into the car with the guy. We drove down this really quiet road for at least another 10 minutes. Now we were driving for close to half an hour. At that point, I just wanted to get out of there. Nobody was saying anything. I sensed a change in the guy's overall personality. I was now afraid to say anything. I felt like if I asked again, he would tell me that he was kidnapping me or something. The guy now almost seemed to be angry. We kept driving and came up to a red light. That was just what I wanted to see. It was this quiet intersection and there were really no other cars on the road. The area was more rural here, with woods off in the distance. As soon as the man stopped at the red light, I just grabbed the door handle. Thankfully, it opened. I jumped out of the guy's truck and just ran for it. He did not try to stop me. I went to the right in the intersection and noticed this small little gas station down the road. I saw the man's truck go straight, driving away from me. I went to the gas station and went inside. There I called my parents, who were able to come and get me. When they heard about what happened, they were just glad that I was okay. My parents and I ended up buying the video games for my son together that year at a higher price from another store. So I guess it all worked out, but I'm really glad that I got out of that guy's car when I did. I'm not sure where we were going. I should have never gotten the car to begin with. That guy was already being sketchy for selling stuff out of the back of his car in a Walmart parking lot.
I went shopping with my friend Jessica on Black Friday last year. I first went over to her house at around 7 a.m., and then we took her car and went to several stores. We live in a pretty busy area, and there are a lot of places to shop nearby. So when we drove to the first store, there were lots of other people there shopping. Overall, it was not too crazy though. There were no specific things that we desperately needed to get, but I wanted to get a start on my Christmas shopping. After going to several different stores, later on we both were at this one clothing store. This one was the busiest one yet, and it was a larger store. I remember that we both found a few things to get, but there was a really long line to check out. We got in the line anyways, and not long after us, this man got in line right behind. He looked sort of mysterious and kind of stood out right away. He was wearing sunglasses and a long black jacket. He also wore a black winter hat. The man just stood there, staring straight ahead. I was talking with Jessica, who was standing next to me the whole time, so I would see the man out of the corner of my vision. I soon realized that he didn't seem to have any items in his hands to buy at all either. For the most part though, I just ignored him. We ended up waiting in line for probably close to 30 minutes. The line slowly moved up until it was finally our turn to check out. After we did, we left the store. Jessica and I needed to go to another store after that, and we were there for a while. Then we were finally done shopping and went back. We went to Jessica's house, and I hung out there with her for a while before going back to my place. When I got home, it was sometime in the late afternoon to early evening. I live in a pretty typical neighborhood for the most part, and a pretty average house. I just remember that at like 10 o'clock at night, there was a knocking on my front door. I got up and walked over to the front window. I wanted to look outside before answering it, because a 10 p.m. knock on the door is a little bit unusual. When I looked, I could not believe my eyes. It was the same man who had been in line behind us at the store. He was still wearing the same exact thing, with the hat and sunglasses and everything. Obviously, I had no idea what he wanted, but I didn't want to find out either. I watched the man just stand there for a while. Then he knocked on the door again. I still didn't answer it. He then stood there for a really long time. He was probably there for at least 5 minutes. Then, finally, he walked away. I saw him go down the street and then out of my sight. A short time after that, a car drove past, which I'm guessing was his. I really don't know why the guy showed up at my house, or how he even knew where I lived. It made me wonder, though, if he had been following me all day or something. If he had been, I certainly didn't notice, and I'm hoping that I don't see him again.
This story took place a long time ago. I was looking to buy a new TV, and when I saw the Black Friday deals at Walmart, I couldn't believe their prices. I decided that I was going to go on Black Friday and get a TV. The store was opening really early in the morning, I think at like 5 a.m. On Thanksgiving, I didn't bother to go to Walmart early and camp out or anything. I had a normal time with my family and then got up super early at like 4 a.m. I got to Walmart about 30 minutes before they opened. What I saw was a large line of people waiting for the doors to open. I even saw somebody had a tent. I was a little bit worried that all of the TVs were going to sell out before I had a chance to get one. I got in the back of the line after what was probably hundreds of people in front of me. Some more people ended up getting in line behind me as I waited, and eventually it was time for the store to finally open. I heard some cheering up ahead from the crowd. Then the line finally started to move. At first, things were very organized, but then people started walking faster and there was kind of like a traffic jam. I witnessed a few people getting shoved a little bit and some people passing others before they got inside the store. I was by myself, so I was just trying to make sure that I didn't get run over and I didn't run over anybody else in the process. When I finally made it into the store, I headed straight for the electronics department, which happened to be in the back middle of the store. Unfortunately, just about everybody else was going in that direction too. I wasn't running to get there or anything, but some people were. I felt like if I was able to get the TV that I wanted, then great, but if I wasn't, it wasn't that big of a deal. I would get another one sometime soon. It wasn't worth going crazy for. It took longer than expected to make it to the electronics department with all the other people. When I got there, I could not physically walk close to the TVs. It was like something out of a movie. People were packed in like sardines, and I saw several employees trying to keep the place in order. I was slowly inching my way closer, maneuvering through the crowd without stepping on anybody's feet. I got closer and closer. At one point, though, I saw a kid, maybe 12 or 13 years old, grabbing a box of a gaming system off of a shelf. As the kid turned, I witnessed a man literally grab it right out of his hands. I thought it was the kid's father at first, but based on the kid's reaction and the man's reaction, I realized that it wasn't. The man quickly turned and then started walking away, and the kid tried to go after him. I saw the sadness in the boy's eyes, and I felt horrible. The worst part is that nobody else seemed to notice. It was literally chaos, so it was hard to see everything happening. They were pretty far away from me, and I decided to try and see if I could get to the man. He was now fleeing, visibly walking as fast as he could away from the boy, who was trying to get after him, but couldn't because of the crowd. Soon, the kid stopped going after the man and returned to what seemed to be his parents. I was looking back and forth between the man and the boy. The boy was with his parents trying to point out where the man had gone, but he couldn't seem to find him. I looked over and saw the man was now farther away. The entire store was busy with people, but this was the busiest part. I started to go faster through the crowd to try and cut the guy off. He didn't notice me getting closer to him, and after about a minute, I had made it within 10 feet of the guy. I called out to him, but the store was pretty loud with all of the people. I maneuvered my way around a few other people and finally caught up with the man. I tapped his shoulder, which he actually ignored. Then I grabbed his shoulder, kind of turning him around. He looked back at me, already with an angry look on his face. He appeared to be in his 40s, had dark brown hair and an average build. I asked him why he took the game from the kid. The man said he didn't know what I was talking about, and he didn't take anything from a kid. Then he turned to keep going. Now I knew that he was lying. I stopped him, and then I reached for the gaming console that he held. The man was very defensive and pulled it away, then in almost the same motion, shoved me so hard that I almost fell. I bumped back into like 5 other people who looked at us very confused. I quickly got up and ran back over to the guy. He had already turned and was trying to walk away extremely fast. I started running, and when I got behind him, I punched at the video game, which he was holding with one arm. I was like an NFL football player trying to punch out the football to cause a fumble. It worked, because the man didn't see me coming. I hit the game, and it flew out of the man's arms and onto the floor. My momentum caused me to run into the guy a little bit. We both went forward, as the video game now lay on the floor behind us. The guy turned around, and so did I. We started to go after it, but as we did, I saw someone else, a totally random person, swoop in and pick up the video game. Then, that person literally ran off down another random aisle. The guy started to run after him, but whoever it was extremely fast and out of sight by now. They disappeared around a corner. The man then turned to me, realizing he couldn't get to the game, and started screaming and cursing me out. I gave it back to him a little bit, as we were both very heated. This lasted for maybe 30 seconds before a couple of Walmart employees approached us. I told them the story, and the guy told his version. His version was that he simply picked the system up off the shelf, happened to get the last one, and then I chased him down, tackled him, and tried to steal it. As we were both pleading our cases, it was like a miracle when I saw the boy and his family walking over. When I saw them, I called them over and told the Walmart employee this was the kid who had the game stolen from him. As soon as the kid started walking over, the other guy turned and just left. A Walmart employee yelled for him to come back, but he was already too far gone. The employees realized that I was right after a small discussion, but it didn't mean a whole lot anymore. The gaming system was gone, and so was the man who took it from the kid. The bottom line is, the kid didn't get it. It did make me feel slightly better, though, to know that the man didn't get it either. I talked with the boy and his parents for a bit, and they were grateful that I tried to help. They said their son had saved up his allowance and had mowed lawns all summer to save up to buy the game. They had also waited in line for almost 5 hours. It was a sad situation, but the kid seemed to take it pretty well. He would probably be able to get it in a couple of weeks. After we talked, I walked away and headed back over to the electronics. I had gotten so involved that I had basically forgotten why I had gone there in the first place. I slowly made my way over to the TVs, with there still being a large crowd. It was actually possible to walk now and it lightened up just a little bit, but it was still very busy. When I got over to the TVs, I couldn't believe it, but they still had a couple of the ones that I wanted. I picked one up and then headed to the checkouts. It probably took another 30 minutes, but eventually I was able to pay for my TV and then leave the store. When I left and got out into the parking lot, that was very busy too. There were people constantly walking in and walking out. There were cars all over the place, both parked and driving. I had parked pretty far in the back, and when I finally got to my vehicle, I opened up the back door to put my TV in. It was in this moment when I heard the sound of a car driving really fast, faster than it should be in a parking lot. I looked to where I heard the noise. That's when I saw a gray sedan driving from the back end of the parking lot towards me. I finished putting my TV in the car and closed the door. The car then slammed on its brakes and stopped right behind my vehicle. I looked and saw the man who I had fought with earlier. He was driving the car. I quickly ran for my driver's door and opened it. As I was doing this, I heard the man's car door opening. I got inside as fast as possible and then locked my doors. Just seconds later, the man arrived at my window. He started pounding on it and tried opening my driver's door. He was yelling and cursing at me like crazy. I ignored him and just put my car into drive and pulled out. Luckily for me, nobody was parked in front of me, so I could do that. The man started running back to his car, but I got out of there as quick as possible, and the parking lot was so crowded that the man was unable to follow me. There was no doubt in my mind, though, that if he was able to, he would have. I drove back home and never saw the guy again. Looking back at that experience, I don't regret what I did. I'm glad that I tried helping the kid, and I'm sad that he didn't get his game. The man was just a really greedy person. But Black Friday shopping can get crazy like that sometimes. I've gone Black Friday shopping a few times since then, but never had an experience quite like that.
I used to work at a popular clothing store years ago. I worked there for a couple years and enjoyed it. Most of the time we would not be that busy. The store was pretty large and spread out. The weekends would often bring in a lot of people, but we could handle it. Black Friday was always the busiest day of the year though, by far. Most of the employees were scheduled to work on Black Friday every year. I was no exception when I worked there, and I remember the first one that I worked. We opened early at like 6 a.m., and from the start there were lots of people in the store. We didn't have that many registers to begin with, but they were all open. Still, despite this, there was a long line of people waiting to check out for most of the time. I normally was not a cashier and I would work around the store, but on this Black Friday I was needed at the checkouts and I worked as a cashier. This went on for probably the first 4 or 5 hours of my shift. Then finally I was off the checkouts and I was moved to working around the store. I would help customers keep things clean and organized in certain areas and things like that. I remember that I was sort of in the back end of the store and I was somewhat close to winter coats, hats, and gloves, that sort of stuff. This area of the store was probably the quietest, and there wasn't that many people over there. As I was over there, I saw this man who was shopping in that section. I looked over right as he was putting a black ski mask over his head. At first, I thought that he was just trying it on, and it was one of the ski masks that we sold. But then I saw him rip off the tag, and he did not take the mask off. I thought that was weird, but still, I didn't want to go up to him and ask him what he was doing or anything. I was busy folding clothes on a display table that had been messed up. The guy was also not really that close to me. Not long after, though, I looked back and he was gone. I didn't think too much of it because Black Friday can be crazy. I quickly forgot about him for the most part. And a few minutes later, it was time for my break. So I headed over to the break room that we had, which happened to be at the back end of the store. Past one of the customer service desks, there was a few hallways and back rooms. The break room was one of them. I went in there and there were a few other employees in as well, maybe 2 or 3. Usually when I worked, there wouldn't be any, maybe one other person on break at the same time as me. I didn't know any of the employees very well that were on their break at that moment, so I just sat down at a table by myself, sort of at the front of the room. It was pretty quiet in there. Nobody was talking, and there were just a few tables and chairs, a refrigerator, and then a TV in the break room. Less than 5 minutes into my break, though, somebody suddenly entered the break room. It was the same man who I had seen earlier. I instantly recognized him because he was still wearing the ski mask. After entering the break room, the man yelled out, "Someone take me to the safe now." Everyone looked up but didn't say a word. I was thinking that it might be a joke, but I was also pretty creeped out by this. After nobody said anything for like 10 seconds, the man repeated himself. Someone behind me said that they didn't know where the safe was. He then demanded a manager. After a few seconds pause, the person behind me said nobody in the break room was a manager. The man then walked over, and I happened to be the one sitting closest to him. He grabbed my arm and made me stand up. The guy then told me that I was going to take him to the safe. I tried to pull away from him, but he had a strong grip on my arm. When I did, he claimed that he had weapons on him. I didn't see anything, but I didn't know for sure. He was much larger than I, a barely 5-foot tall woman. The man practically dragged me out of the room and into another hallway. There were a few other hallways down there, as it was the back area of the store. No one else was in the immediate vicinity. The man told me again to tell him where the safe was, claiming that he knew we had one. Now, being 100% honest, I truly had no idea where our safe was. I didn't even know for sure if we even had one in the store. I'm guessing we did, but I never cared to know anything about it. I told the man I didn't know, and he yelled at me, claiming that I did. He seemed to think that I was a manager for some reason, and I didn't know why, because I wasn't. I was terrified. In that moment, I wished that I did know where it was so that the guy wouldn't hurt me, and I could just tell him where it was and he would leave. I wanted him to leave us alone. We walked up and down a few hallways over there with no luck. He was looking for it and kept asking me where it was, but my guess was as good as his. I told him maybe it was at the front of the store, which made him mad. He said that was just a ploy to get him out. I said there was no ploy, but the man was seeming to get panicked. He seemed to really believe that one of us back there would lead him to the store safe. I'm not sure where he got his information from. We started going to random doors in the back rooms of the store that were open. Nothing led to a safe. After what felt like a long time of wandering around the back with this guy, he walked towards an exit. Then he let go of me, ran to the door, and opened it. This was not a commonly used exit at all, so he was leaving the store to a back alley type of area. After he was gone and the door swung shut, I felt a huge amount of relief. I ran back to the break room and told everyone to call the police, which they already had. A bunch of people were coming up and asking if I was okay. I was surprised at how fast the word traveled. Within minutes, the whole store basically got shut down. There were tons of cops there, and I answered a bunch of questions from them. The man ended up being located later on in the day. I was sent home early, and our store was only closed for about an hour before opening again. That was by far my craziest Black Friday experience.
This was on Black Friday 4 years ago. It was in the middle of all the crowded Black Friday shopping going on. I had gone to Best Buy to look at computers. I was intending on buying a new laptop and possibly a desktop computer as well. They were probably the most popular thing that was going on sale there that day, so I got there a couple of hours early and waited in line. There was quite a few other people waiting, so I brought a chair and some hand warmers and just watched videos and played games on my phone as I waited. I remember there was a guy standing behind me who had short blonde hair, and he was just standing there facing me but not really looking at me the entire time. At one point, I asked him how he was doing, but he didn't answer me. He didn't even look at me at all. The more time went by, it seemed awkward, and just really strange as well. At last, finally, the doors to Best Buy were open, and all the people rushed inside. I went to the computers and got the laptop I had been planning on getting. I ended up getting the desktop computer as well. I was there for maybe 30 minutes, and then I left and brought the things to my car. I put them in the front passenger seat, and then went around and got into the car. But as soon as I sat down and started the engine, I looked in my mirror and saw the man who had been standing behind me in line. He was sitting in the back seat of my car. I freaked out and immediately jumped out of the car and ran all the way back inside to Best Buy. I got out my phone and called the police. Once I regained my composure, I went back out into the parking lot, but my car was gone. I realized I had left the keys in it. The police arrived a short time later. We figured the guy was probably planning to rob me, so I guess he got my stuff. I was just lucky to be okay. But the next day, I got a call saying my car had been found abandoned about 10 miles away, and both of my computers were still inside. I used to work at a Target store. One time, I had to work during Black Friday. I knew that it would be really busy at the store, and I was prepared for there to be lots of people, I worked out in the parking lot pushing carts most of the time. We opened up on Thanksgiving, so I was there from the start. Fortunately, we had lots of people working that night, so for me it wasn't too bad. I was mostly just going around the parking lot and getting carts that people did not put in the places they were supposed to. A lot of carts were left in random parking spaces or near a curb, so I was getting those a lot. There was another person out working with me getting the carts, so it was nice to have help, and I wasn't really in a rush. But I remember that when it got later, at probably around 11 p.m., things were still really busy. I was walking near one of the far back corners of the parking lot, collecting a stray cart that was over there. When I did, I happened to notice a guy really far away pushing a cart around the side of the Target building. This was strange because there were no parking spaces on that side of the store. I wasn't sure where he was going with it, so as I brought in the cart that I had just got, I kept an eye on him. The man just kept on going down the building. So I put the cart that I had in a cart rack, and then I walked to the side of the building myself. I wanted to see where the guy was going, and when I got to the side of the building, I just barely saw him pushing the cart still, going completely behind the Target store. So I kept going, and I was planning on asking the guy where he was going with that cart. I could not tell if anything was in the cart or not, but it didn't appear so. But I also knew that there were no parking spaces behind the building either. Behind our Target, there was a small and quiet access road that was only used for truck deliveries. Then there was a grass area with several pine trees, and on the other side of that was another quiet road. So when I finally got around to the back of the building, at first I couldn't tell where the man had gone. I didn't really see anything. But then I heard some talking coming from just inside the grass. I walked down the paved area and then went up into the grass. There were several trees in the area, and I could tell they were behind them. It made it almost a wooded area, but within the trees was a clearing. When I got inside of that clearing, I saw 2 pickup trucks, about 5 or 6 men standing around, and 2 Target shopping carts. Another guy had a cart as well. I had no idea what was going on. They all stopped and looked at me. One of the guys finally spoke and called me over. I just had a bad feeling about it. I just said, "What are you guys doing?" The guy told me to come over to them again. For some reason, I was terrified and I just started walking away. I didn't even ask for the carts back. When I turned, I heard one of the guys start to walk after me. At that point, I just sprinted away, running as fast as I could. I was able to make it back around the Target, and I went inside the store for a while. When I was in there, I saw one of our security guards, and I decided to tell him about the situation. He asked me to show him where the guys were, so we both went back there, but when we did, they were gone. The security guard was not exactly sure what had been going on there either. After that, we both went back to the front of the store, and he went inside. I worked outside mostly for the next hour or so, but I remember that when I was getting a few carts from deep in the parking lot, I noticed something. One of the same trucks that I had seen parked behind the Target in the grass was now parked out front. It was just to the left of the right side entrance doors. I know there are a lot of pickup trucks out there, but this one I could just tell was the same. It was the same color, make, and model, and I just knew it. As I walked closer to the store with the carts, I suddenly saw 2 men come sprinting out of the Target store. They were holding several items in their hands, no doubt shoplifting. They both ran to the pickup truck, quickly got inside, and the truck then screeched off, squealing the tires as it left. Soon after, I saw the Target security guard come running out of the store. I caught up with him and talked to him about what happened. He said he was going to go back and look at the security footage. Obviously, Black Friday weekend was very busy for the security guys. That was a crazy thing to happen. I think I may have found those guys planning their shoplifting adventures or something, but I'm really not sure exactly what it was.
Several years ago, I went Black Friday shopping at Walmart. There were several locations near where I lived, and most of them opened at 6 p.m. on Thanksgiving night. I looked at their ad, and I knew of several items that were on sale that I was interested in. The ones I wanted most were electronics. Several video games caught my eye, a laptop, and possibly a TV. I wasn't desperate to get these things, but if I was able to get a great deal, I would do it. I went by myself because nobody else in my family wanted to go shopping on Thanksgiving night and would rather go the next day. I only planned to go to Walmart and was going to go back home afterwards. When I got there, a little after 6, the parking lot was already packed. I had never seen so many cars there before. I really had no interest in standing in a line or running through the store to get stuff like I had seen on some videos of crazy Black Friday shopping. After I parked my car and got inside the store, it was way more crazy than I thought it would be though. It was just like the videos that I had seen. People were literally everywhere. I was getting bumped into by people left and right just after entering the store. More and more people were coming in behind me as well. I quickly realized just getting anything would be difficult. I saw people holding TVs over their heads, and others were literally trying to sprint through the store. Right after seeing all of this, I decided that maybe I should just leave and come back in the morning when things weren't so crazy. I was kind of getting pushed by the wave of people deeper into the store. I walked around through the crowd and finally found an aisle with some walking room. I walked more through the store a bit, but everywhere I went seemed to be extremely crowded. The whole place seemed like complete chaos. I slowly made my way against the crowd, trying to get back to the exit. It took me a while, but eventually I was able to get back outside. I walked back out to my car and went inside before realizing that my wallet was gone. Immediately, my heart sank. I had no idea what had happened, if somebody stole it or if it fell out of my pocket or something. I thought it was unlikely that it fell out and more likely that somebody stole it. I knew that it was in my right side pocket of my pants where I always kept it. When I was in the store, I had bumped into so many people that really anybody probably could have pickpocketed me. Even if it had somehow just fallen out of my pocket, the chances of it still being on the ground without somebody picking it up were slim. Still, I needed to give it a chance, so I went back into the Walmart to look around and see. I walked through the mob of people, looking down at the ground for my wallet. I tried my best to retrace my steps, but never found anything. After that, I decided to go to the service desk and ask if somebody had found it and turned it in. I knew this was a really long shot, and it took probably 15 minutes just to get there and be able to talk to anybody. But when I did, they said they didn't have any lost wallets, and I left the store disappointed. I got back inside my car and tried to think about what possibly had happened. I went on my phone to freeze my credit and debit cards that I had in my wallet. Just then, my phone started to ring. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered the call anyways. There was a man on the other end, and he sounded very friendly. He said that he had found a wallet in Walmart, and he thought it belonged to me, and I was lucky that he found it because he wanted to give it back to me tonight. I felt extremely lucky by this, and was super happy that somebody had found my wallet and actually wanted to give it back. I asked if they were still near the Walmart, but they said no. The man on the other end of the phone said that I should come by and pick it up, and he wasn't that far away. He said we could meet outside of his house, and asked if he could text me the address. I said sure, and after he texted it to me, the man said that he would see me soon, and hung up. I was still just super relieved that I was going to get my wallet back. I put the address into my phone, and then left Walmart to go there. It took maybe about 10 minutes to get to the location. It took me in the opposite direction of where I lived, and the roads went from busy to quiet and more isolated. I turned onto a road covered by woods on both sides. Now I was very close to the location, but I was getting a little bit creeped out. I wasn't really seeing any houses at all. The area just seemed like woods or maybe a park. I kept driving and eventually arrived. It definitely was not somebody's house. It looked like an isolated park in the middle of the woods. I hadn't seen another car in a long time either. I parked my car and texted the guy that I was there. I then questioned if I was at the correct location. I got a response saying that I was, and I was then told to walk into the forest. By this point, I knew something was wrong, and I wasn't going to be stupid enough to actually walk into the forest. Still, I was curious. I stood outside my car, observing the area. It was really dark, and I really couldn't see much. It was also very quiet. Then, I heard a noise coming from inside the woods. I got a little scared, but I guess it could have just been an animal, like a squirrel. I texted the number again, asking why I was supposed to walk into the forest, and I thought that I was meeting at the guy's house. After I sent the text, I heard a quiet ding noise coming from inside the woods. When I heard that, I got back inside my car immediately. Getting my wallet back wasn't worth it. After I was inside my car, I turned my headlights on. This revealed what appeared to be a man peeking out from behind a tree in the woods. He then ducked back behind it. I sped out of there, and when I got home, I froze all of the cards that had been in my wallet. Luckily, I only had like $20 in cash in there, but I did need to get a new driver's license. I went to my bank the next morning and was able to get another card. Overall, I don't know who stole my card or how, but I'm glad I didn't go into the woods. I'm also much more careful when I go shopping, especially on Black Friday.
This story happened a few years ago on Thanksgiving night. I was 20 years old and in college at the time. I remember that a lot of stores were opening on the night of Thanksgiving, and they were going to be open all night. My family was hosting Thanksgiving at our house, but I was planning to go Black Friday shopping with my best friend Jennifer later. We weren't going to be waiting in line or anything, but we're still planning to do a bit of shopping. At probably like 10 p.m., when most of the people had left our family gathering, Jennifer came over to my house. She lived just down the street, so she could walk there. Then we took my car and drove down to the local shopping center. This was an area that had tons of stores and restaurants, all within short distances of each other. When we got there, it was packed. A lot of stores had already opened, and I had never seen it so busy at this time of night. We first went to 2 different stores that were close to each other and got a few things. We were going to go to a couple of more places, and it was maybe midnight by now. As we were leaving Bath & Body Works, Jennifer quietly said to me that a guy had been following us around. I hadn't even noticed. I started to look behind me, and Jennifer stopped me. She said that he was just a little ways back. After leaving the store, we walked along a sidewalk in front of some other stores on a strip mall. We entered a coffee shop that happened to be open. When we went inside, the man did not immediately enter the coffee shop after us. As we waited in line, Jennifer told me that she noticed the man in the first store that we went to. She also saw him in Bath & Body Works, and he was by himself and always seemed to be walking a ways behind us. I guess that Jennifer is a more observant person than me, because I hadn't noticed. I was too busy shopping. We both got some coffee and then sat down at a table in the back corner of the coffee shop. It was decently busy because of all the other shoppers out. Shortly after sitting down, we both witnessed the man who Jennifer had talked about entering the coffee shop. She pointed him out to me, and he came walking in and then made eye contact for a second. He was kind of short, had short blonde hair, and was thin. He got into the back of the line. After standing there for a few seconds, the guy then turned and started walking over to us. He approached our table and then said hi and asked us how we were doing. Then he turned specifically to me and asked me for my number. I told him that I had a boyfriend, even though I didn't. It was really awkward, but he seemed to take it pretty well. He just said okay and then turned and walked out of the coffee shop. We watched from the window as he walked out and then got inside a car. He did not immediately drive away though. As Jennifer and I talked and sat inside of the coffee shop, occasionally we looked over. The guy did not drive away and still seemed to be inside of his car. At least his car was still there. It was far away, but something about him definitely seemed suspicious. After a little while, Jennifer and I decided to go to another store that was within walking distance. We left the coffee shop and then walked along the sidewalk back over to where some of the stores were. As we were walking along that sidewalk, we looked back, just to be safe. But when we did, we saw the man get out of his car. He started walking in our direction. He was a long ways back, but it seemed pretty clear that he was going to keep following us. We kept walking along the sidewalk and decided to go into the largest store in that immediate area, which was a Target. It took probably almost 10 minutes to walk there, and the man remained a ways back walking the entire time. When we got inside of the Target, it was extremely busy. Soon, though, we saw the man enter the store after us. This was just really creepy. We looked in his direction, and I made eye contact with him again briefly. He looked away, acting like he wasn't following us. I wondered if he actually thought we hadn't noticed. I mean, I hadn't noticed at first, but now it was really obvious. Jennifer and I decided to leave. We were really tired of this creep trailing us. We walked through the entire store, trying to blend in with the crowd. The pace that we were walking at was pretty fast. We made it all the way around the store and back over to the doors. Then, we went outside, and we both just started running. We were basically sprinting, trying to make it as hard as possible for the guy to keep up with us. It took us about 2 or 3 minutes to make it to my car, which was not in the same parking lot that the man's was at. We both got inside, and then I started the engine and drove away. After leaving the parking lot, we got onto the road and did not see the man at all after that. We got back to my house safely, and I felt lucky that nothing had happened. We both couldn't believe how long that guy had followed us for. It was definitely one of the creepiest things to ever happen to me, and I'm glad that Jennifer noticed him when she did.
I used to work at Target. This was around 5 years ago. I mostly worked on the sales floor, but was also trained to be a cashier and do some other stuff. One year, I was scheduled to work on Black Friday. Target opened at 6 p.m. on Thanksgiving night, and because at the time I was still in high school and had just turned 18 years old, I got off by 10 p.m. It was nice to only have to work for about 4 hours, and I clocked in that night at about 5:45 p.m. When I got there, I saw that there was already a line outside, and the parking lot was nearly full. I went inside through the employee-only entrance. When I got inside, I immediately saw that just about everybody we had was working. I had worked there for about 6 months at the time, and knew most of all the other employees because of working on the sales floor, and also sometimes cashiering. I would see just about everybody, and I said hi to a bunch of people that I knew. I even saw some faces that I didn't recognize. I'm sure there were some new seasonal workers and other people who normally didn't work the same times as me. All of our managers were working as well, and I figured that we wouldn't have a problem with the Black Friday rush. However, when the doors were unlocked and a bunch of people rushed into the store, things got really busy fast. I quickly found myself doing many different tasks, and time was flying by. I was helping customers find things, picking up items people had left places and putting them back where they belong, and for a short time I cashiered. I think we had every single lane in the store open, which I had never seen before. After a few hours, I was near the back of the store, organizing one of the many shelves that had been messed up. We were still really busy, but not quite as busy as we had been in the hour or so after opening. Another employee came into my aisle and asked if I had a second. I looked up and saw a guy that I didn't recognize. He must have been one of the new seasonal guys. The Target name tag on his red shirt said, Michael. I said, sure, what do you need? He said to me that he was new and this was like his 4th day working, and he wasn't really sure how to handle a situation. I said I could try to help and asked him what the situation was. Michael said he would show me, and we walked out of the aisle. Then we walked past several customers and through a door on the side of the store leading to the back room area that we had. Back there, we just had products that hadn't made it to the sales floor yet. We were on the side of the store opposite from grocery, so it was quieter back there. After we walked back, we went through an exit door leading to the outside. Then, Michael walked out, and I followed. When we had made it now outside of the store, I was very confused. Outside the store, there was a little sidewalk, a small grass area with trees planted here and there, and then there was a quiet road. When I was out there, I noticed there was a car parked on the side of the road right next to where we were. Michael said, I'm trying to help these customers. I asked who they were, and I was interrupted by the doors of the car opening. It was a typical 4-door car, which was black, and I saw 2 men get out from the front seats. They were fairly large, and both had hats and sunglasses on, as well as gloves. The gloves weren't too strange because it was cold out, but the sunglasses sure were. I then felt myself being grabbed near the top of my arms, just below my shoulders, by Michael, who was behind me. He started pushing me towards the 2 men and the car. I asked what was going on and what he was doing. I couldn't believe this was actually happening. Get in the car, Michael said. It took a few seconds for me to kind of grasp the situation. The men seemed like they were coming over to help Michael get me inside their car. I struggled, but Michael's grip was strong. I started screaming and kicked out with my feet at Michael's ankles. It felt like I got him really good on the shin. This caused him to let go of me and almost fall to the ground. When this happened, both of the men started running to stop me. I turned around and sprinted towards the door, but quickly realized that it would be locked. The doors were rarely used and always locked from the outside. I realized then that I would have to try and outrun these men around to the front side of the store. I kept sprinting along the side, but could tell that the other men were gaining on me. I changed directions and then started running out into the street. Michael had gotten up and was now running after me as well. I was screaming like a crazy person and running to try to get away. When they were within probably 5 feet of me, I barely made it to the parking lot and saw a car that appeared to be driving in our direction. I ran right towards it and it honked at me. However, the men chasing me didn't want to grab me right in front of somebody else, at least that's what I figured. Instead, the men just kind of stood back and watched. I ran to the driver's door and yelled for them to call the police. Whoever was driving the car must have been super confused, but when the men heard me saying this, they started to leave. From there, I was able to go back inside the Target store. Police were called, and I told them everything I could. Unfortunately, the men did get away. Michael, if that was even his name, didn't even work there. I guess it's not too hard to find a red shirt and khakis and get a hold of a Target name tag. On Black Friday, nobody would really suspect him because of how busy it was. Our store did have security cameras, so I'm hoping that he was caught, whoever he was. I'm just glad I was able to get away.
This happened on Black Friday in 2008. At the time, I was a few years out of college and was working my first real job. I finally had a little bit of money in my bank account and I was excited to go Black Friday shopping. In particular, I wanted to go to Best Buy, which was the best place to get electronics back then. They were having a really big sale. It was like pretty much everything was on sale and had a big discount. I had gone Black Friday shopping in the past and always enjoyed it, but on this year I took it more serious. Most of my electronics were really old, and I had them since college or even high school. Some of my stuff was even from the 90s, so I was planning to get a ton of new things. A TV, new laptop, maybe an iPod, which were a newer thing back then. My best friend Riley, who I had known since we were kids, was kind of in the same situation as me. Riley had recently got a new apartment as well, so we were going to go shopping together. We planned to actually camp outside of Best Buy to try to be one of the first people for the sale. I had remembered years previous that people had done this, and I always thought that they were crazy, but now it seemed like it might be fun. On Thanksgiving night, I met up with Riley and we headed to the Best Buy. I believe that they opened at 5 a.m. the next morning, so it wouldn't be too long of a night. But it was fairly cold out with it being late November. We bundled up and I had brought a tent and sleeping bags as well. When we got to the Best Buy, there were a few people already there. I saw a few other tents and people sitting in chairs they had brought and stuff. One guy brought a TV and a portable generator or something, and several people were watching it. Riley and I were maybe the 30th people or so to get there, and people continued to arrive after us. We got in line and it was maybe 7 p.m., so we had about 10 hours to go. Quickly, the line got longer behind us. There was a fence divider on the sidewalk out front of the store, so the line was pretty organized. For the first few hours, Riley and I talked with each other, as well as some of the people around us. We got to know them a little bit, and talked about the things that we were excited to buy. Most of the people seemed pretty nice. By about 10 p.m. we were getting cold and tired. We decided to try to get some sleep, so we got inside the tent and in our sleeping bags. Some other people nearby went in their tents as well, and things got pretty quiet. Surprisingly, I fell asleep pretty quick. I'd been worried that I wouldn't be able to get any sleep at all. However, at some point in the night, I was awoken. At first, I was a little dazed and confused, but I quickly remembered where I was and why I was in a tent. Then I heard the sound of the tent being unzipped. I did not know why this was happening. I looked over and Riley was still in the tent and was sleeping. Then I saw right in front of me the tent start to open. This creepy guy started looking in. He was looking right at me and had a gross-looking beard and messy hair. It really freaked me out. He stopped and then was just staring at me. After a few seconds, I was finally able to speak. I asked him who he was. He said nothing, but just kept staring at me. It was really weird. I sat up and the guy quickly closed the tent and moved away. I was glad that he was gone. I reached over and opened the tent and looked outside. I couldn't see him anywhere. He must have walked away. So I closed the tent and then tried to fall back asleep. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. We had our alarm set for 4, which was an hour before the store opened. I thought that maybe the guy was trying to cut the line, because we had seen the people around us and he wasn't one of them. I had no idea where he had come from. I was somehow able to fall back asleep and then woke up at 4 to our alarm. Riley and I both got up, packed up the tent, and then waited the final hour. It was crazy to leave the tent and now see more people around. And in the final hour, a bunch more cars entered the parking lot, and the line got even longer. There was now a huge crowd outside. I talked to Riley about the guy in the tent. We both just laughed it off, even though I had been really creeped out in the moment, and I was still kind of creeped out thinking back to it. I looked around and didn't see the guy anywhere. I knew that I would remember that face. I couldn't get it out of my head. It was so creepy. At last, the store opened. Everybody rushed inside, but it wasn't that crazy. Things were pretty civilized. There was no pushing or shoving or anything, at least not that I saw. Riley and I quickly made our way to the items that we wanted. Before we knew it, the store became extremely busy. Between employees, security people, and mostly customers, it was packed. We walked around getting the things that we wanted. After being inside the store for maybe 20 minutes, I saw him. The same guy who I had seen at the tent. He was kind of far away, but I knew that it was him. I pointed him out to Riley and we talked about what happened again. The man was near the front of the store, and he didn't really seem to be looking at anything. He was just kind of standing there and looking around. Then he looked over and we made eye contact with him. I quickly looked away and Riley and I moved. We shopped around a little bit more, and we both got pretty much everything that we wanted to and then some. Then we went to the front of the store and checked out. When we were waiting in line to check out, I looked for the man again, but did not see him. I was glad that I didn't see him anymore.
He very well could have still been there because the store was still packed, but I didn't see him, and so I didn't really care. After we checked out, we left, and then we actually went to Target and Walmart for fun. Those stores were both really busy, and I don't really remember if we got anything or not, but I just remember that we went there. We then went to a local mall for a little while before going home. I dropped Riley off, and then I went back to my apartment. I was tired from getting only a few hours of sleep in a tent, and I took a nice nap. Then I got up and started setting up some of my electronics. Now, that night I was up in my apartment just relaxing. I was watching my new TV and setting up my new computer. Obviously it was Friday, so I had no work the following day. Plus I had taken a nap, so I was up late. At a little after midnight, I remember that I noticed something out of the corner of my eye from the window. My apartment was on the second floor of the building. I remember that it looked out to the parking lot. At this time of night, it would be very quiet. However, I had seen someone walking. For whatever reason, I noticed. I looked over, and there he was again, that same guy. The man who had opened our tent, and the man who I had seen in Best Buy. He was just standing in the parking lot and staring up at me. It sent a chill down my spine. I instantly got up and closed all the blinds and covered all the windows. I was so creeped out that I was too scared to look out of them again. I had lived in that apartment for multiple years and had never seen the guy. I didn't think that he lived there. After a while, I looked again. He was gone. The guy was nowhere in sight, and I was afraid that he might be in the building. My doors were locked, but luckily nothing else happened. I never saw him again after that or anything. I still don't know how or why he went to my apartment. It was the craziest thing. I will never forget that creepy man's stare.
My name is Ashley, and this is something that happened way back in 2003. That year, at Thanksgiving, I decided I was going to get up early and do some Black Friday shopping the next day. I had looked at some advertisements, and there were some really good deals. I also got some ideas for gifts for family members as well. During this time, I was 20 years old and back from college for the time. I asked my parents if they wanted to go shopping with me in the morning, but they already had plans. So the next day, at like 6 a.m., I got up and went to the nearby shopping center. I first went to Best Buy and then Walmart and Target, and I got a few things. Each of those stores were very busy as you would expect on Black Friday. My fourth stop of the day was Circuit City. By now, it was not quite as crazy as before, but it was still extremely busy with lots of people there. I remember that I went inside and I started looking around at stuff. Not long after, this employee guy came up to me. I remember that his name was Todd, and he asked me if I needed help with anything. I told him something like, "No thanks, I was just looking." But this Todd guy seemed to follow me around. He started making conversation with me, asking how I was doing and stuff. I was wondering why he was spending so much time talking to me when there were so many other customers around. But he didn't really say anything that strange or ask me anything that personal, so I just figured that he was a friendly guy. He appeared to be in his mid to late 20s if I had to guess. So eventually he sort of left me alone, and I walked around the store and found a few things to buy. But then Todd found me again. He asked me if I was ready to check out, and I said yes. I remember that he then opened a register and scanned my items, and I paid. During the checkout, he asked me for my address, saying that it was for the protection plan of one of the items I was buying, and I gave it to him. After that, I left the Circuit City store and headed home. I got back and hung out around the house with my family for the rest of the day. However, I remember that I was watching a movie with my parents that night, and there was a knock at the door. By now, it was like 9 p.m., so this was a little bit strange. My dad got up to go and see who was there, but I was curious, so I went over and looked out the window. When I did, I saw Todd from Circuit City. I couldn't believe that he was at my house. My dad answered the door, but as soon as it opened, Todd turned around and started walking off. I remember my dad asking him who he was and what he was doing, but Todd pretty much just ran away and didn't answer any of his questions. I told my parents about what happened at Circuit City. We all agreed that Todd was a bit of a creep for that. I figured that I wouldn't see him again though, but I was wrong. A while later, we all went to bed. The lights in the house went off, and I went to my bedroom. I was tired from being up so early, and I fell asleep rather fast, but I awoke not too much long after that. At first, I was not sure what had woken me up. I didn't hear anything, and I looked around the room and saw nothing. But then, I noticed my bedroom window. Todd was standing right outside of it and looking in. I quickly got up, and without hesitation, I ran out of the room. I went to the phone in the kitchen, and I called the police. I told them about what happened, and after that, I woke my parents. We waited inside, and when the police got there, Todd was gone. However, after telling them what I knew about him, such as that he worked at Circuit City, it was not a big mystery as to who it was. I heard that Todd ended up getting fired from Circuit City. Luckily, after that, I never saw him again.
This happened last year. I currently work at a pretty popular clothing store. I've been working there for almost 2 years and do a little bit of everything. Last year was my first Black Friday at that store. I'd worked Black Friday one other time at a previous retail job I had, and I also go Black Friday shopping every year, so I knew about how busy and crazy it could possibly get. I worked at 5 a.m. on Friday, and when we opened, things got busy pretty much right away. After working at the cash registers for a few hours, I moved to organizing things throughout the store. We were slightly less busy, but still had lots of people throughout the store. I was at one end when a man approached me. He was holding a sweater, and he asked me if they had it in a size medium. I looked at it and then walked over to where the sweaters were. I saw that we did have several of them and showed them to the man, but he didn't seem too interested in the actual sweaters. Instead, he started asking me questions about myself, how I was doing, when I got off work, if I was single. The guy seemed like a total creep. He was tall, thin, and bald. I talked professionally to him, and finally, I think he got the hint that I wasn't interested in him, and he went on his way. I went back to doing the work that I had been. However, I did notice the guy staring at me from a distance. It wasn't all that obvious, especially with all the people that were there, but it sure was creepy. I looked up every minute or so, and would always see the guy standing somewhere staring at me. I was really creeped out. Soon after, though, it was time for one of my breaks. It couldn't have come at a better time. I was really happy to get off the sales floor away from this guy. I'd been working for several hours now, and when I came back from my break, the store was still really busy, but the man was now gone. I didn't see him anywhere throughout the store and was really happy about that. I worked until 1 p.m. and then, finally, was off for the day. I was tired, but planned on going shopping with my friend Amelia afterwards. So, I got some coffee at Starbucks and then we did some Black Friday shopping. When I got home that night, I watched a movie and fell asleep at my apartment. However, I woke up at some point. I really didn't know what woke me, but I sat up in bed and looked around. Then, I saw the same creepy guy from earlier. He was staring right into my bedroom window. My apartment was on ground level, so he could just look right in. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Was this a dream? It wasn't. We were making eye contact, and he just kept staring at me. I was terrified, and I ran out of my bedroom and into the bathroom that was out of view of the windows. I shut the door and then called the police. I explained to them that some guy was staring into my bedroom window who had also been staring at me at work earlier in the day. As I was on my phone, I thought that I heard him trying to open the back door leading outside from my apartment. I stayed in the bathroom with the door locked. The police got there about 10 minutes later. Unfortunately, the man was long gone by then. They looked around but couldn't find him. There was really nothing else that could be done, so after telling me to call them if I saw anything else, the police left. I was sure to cover all of my windows well before going back to bed. I haven't seen the guy since then at all, but it still scares me that he knows where I live. I really don't know how he found out where I lived either, other than thinking he must have somehow followed me home, which is really creepy. After the holiday season last year, I got another job, but I still occasionally work at the same store, and now with Black Friday coming up, I'm planning to help out and work there again. Hopefully the guy doesn't return. Last year, I got up really early and went Black Friday shopping for the first time ever. I've seen many things over the years about how crazy it is, and I have actually shopped on Black Friday before, but never early in the morning. But last year, there were some deals on TVs at Walmart, and I happened to be in the market for a new one for my bedroom. The deals seemed too good to pass up, but I also knew that they would probably sell out rather quickly. So I got up early on the morning of Black Friday and drove to my local Walmart, which opened at 5 a.m. It was still dark out, obviously, and I parked in the back of the full parking lot and walked up to see a line of people had formed waiting to get inside. I went to the back of the line, as it was like 4:55 a.m. or something like that. The line was not outrageously long, so I did have a good feeling that I would be able to get what I wanted. Within a few minutes of being in line, at least 20 people got in line behind me. I felt glad that I got there when I did. Then, I saw the line start to move and realized that the store must have been open for business. I made it inside a short time later, and the whole store was already packed. There were either customers or employees everywhere. I went as fast as I could to the electronics section, which seemed to be where just about everybody else was going. When I got there, I saw people putting things in their carts and others grabbing TVs. I went over, found the one I wanted, and grabbed it. There were only a few left. Once I had it in my arms, it was a great feeling because I'm sure they sold out within minutes. I went to the front and checked out. It took probably 20 minutes to do so because of how busy it was in there. And after that, I got out of the store and was going back to my car. I had a cart for my TV, and I made it within probably 50 feet of my vehicle when I noticed a man laying on the ground like 10 feet away from my car. He had crutches, and one he was laying on with the other about 10 feet away from him. When I got close to him, he looked at me, and I asked the guy if he was okay. The guy said he had fallen and asked if I could help him up. I left my cart next to my car and walked over to help the guy up. When I reached my hand out to him, he was struggling to get to his feet. Then I heard a noise behind me. I turned around to see somebody take my cart and start running away with it with my TV still inside. The guy in the crutches then sprung to his feet, grabbed the other crutch off the ground, and began running away. I had been set up. I couldn't believe this, and I was furious. I chased after the guy who had my cart. He and the guy who was pretending to be injured ran in the same direction towards another car. There was an SUV with the back of it already open, where the men jumped into it, shut the door, and then sped off. I was so mad, and also couldn't believe that people would do this. It was a big hassle, but I was able to get another TV without extra charge from Walmart. But I would like to warn everybody from my experience to be careful when you're out shopping on Black Friday. Last year, I got up really early and went Black Friday shopping for the first time ever. I've seen many things over the years about how crazy it is, and I have actually shopped on Black Friday before, but never early in the morning. But last year, there were some deals on TVs at Walmart, and I happened to be in the market for a new one for my bedroom. The deals seemed too good to pass up, but I also knew that they would probably sell out rather quickly. So I got up early on the morning of Black Friday and drove to my local Walmart, which opened at 5 a.m. It was still dark out, obviously, and I parked in the back of the full parking lot and walked up to see a line of people had formed waiting to get inside. I went to the back of the line, as it was like 4:55 a.m. or something like that. The line was not outrageously long, so I did have a good feeling that I would be able to get what I wanted. Within a few minutes of being in line, at least 20 people got in line behind me. I felt glad that I got there when I did. Then, I saw the line start to move and realized that the store must have been open for business. I made it inside a short time later, and the whole store was already packed. There were either customers or employees everywhere. I went as fast as I could to the electronics section, which seemed to be where just about everybody else was going. When I got there, I saw people putting things in their carts and others grabbing TVs. I went over, found the one I wanted, and grabbed it. There were only a few left. Once I had it in my arms, it was a great feeling because I'm sure they sold out within minutes. I went to the front and checked out. It took probably 20 minutes to do so because of how busy it was in there. And after that, I got out of the store and was going back to my car. I had a cart for my TV, and I made it within probably 50 feet of my vehicle when I noticed a man laying on the ground like 10 feet away from my car. He had crutches, and one he was laying on with the other about 10 feet away from him. When I got close to him, he looked at me, and I asked the guy if he was okay. The guy said he had fallen and asked if I could help him up. I left my cart next to my car and walked over to help the guy up. When I reached my hand out to him, he was struggling to get to his feet. Then I heard a noise behind me. I turned around to see somebody take my cart and start running away with it with my TV still inside. The guy in the crutches then sprung to his feet, grabbed the other crutch off the ground, and began running away. I had been set up. I couldn't believe this, and I was furious. I chased after the guy who had my cart. He and the guy who was pretending to be injured ran in the same direction towards another car. There was an SUV with the back of it already open, where the men jumped into it, shut the door, and then sped off. I was so mad, and also couldn't believe that people would do this. It was a big hassle, but I was able to get another TV without extra charge from Walmart. But I would like to warn everybody from my experience to be careful when you're out shopping on Black Friday.
A few years ago, I went Black Friday shopping by myself. It was Thanksgiving night, and I wanted to get a head start on Christmas shopping. Plus, there were some really good deals. I had already sort of planned some gifts of what I was going to get for a few of my family members and friends. In my family, Thanksgiving and Christmas is a really big deal, so I had a lot of things to buy. I was at my parents' house for Thanksgiving, and I only lived about 10 minutes away in my apartment. At about 9 p.m. or so, I left my parents' house to go shopping. My plan was to only be gone for like 2 hours and then return to my parents. First, I went to Target and was going to go to Walmart afterwards. Both of these stores had already been open for a couple of hours. They were both also within like 2 minutes of each other. After arriving at Target, the parking lot was packed with cars everywhere. I went inside and saw that it was extremely busy. I wouldn't expect anything less on Black Friday. After browsing around, I found several things and ended up buying them. Then I left Target and headed to Walmart. That store was more of the same as Target. People everywhere and very busy. I spent about 30 minutes inside, finding everything that I needed to. I was very happy with how my shopping trip went, and I left at about 10:15 and headed back to my car. After I started to drive back to my parents' place, I was exiting out of the Walmart, and I was about to go back onto the road when I saw something. This particular area where I was driving was like on the side of Walmart. It was much quieter than the front, and much darker and not as many lights. I saw what appeared to be a female child wearing a bright pink jacket just sitting there on the side of the road. It wasn't like a bus stop or anything either, and nobody else appeared to be around. I felt like she might have been lost or something. It seemed like I needed to stop and make sure that she was okay. I slowed down my car and then came to a stop, and when I did, I saw her immediately get up and start to approach me. But now that I was close to her and could actually see, I realized that I was wrong. This was not a child, but a grown woman. She was small, maybe like 5 feet, very short, and also young, probably in her early 20s, but definitely not a child. When I saw this, I wanted to just drive away, but I had already stopped. I rolled down my window, and she came like right up to it. She was wearing a winter hat and had long brown hair. Before I said anything, she asked me if I could help her. I asked her what was wrong. She said that she was stranded and needed a ride home. I didn't really want to give somebody that I didn't know a ride. She claimed that she didn't live very far, and then looked like she was going to start crying. I caved and said okay and told her to get in. I didn't think I was in any danger or anything. I mean, she was very small, and in my opinion, she was lucky that I stopped for her and not some kidnapper or something. I was more just annoyed, because it was late at night and I wanted to get back home. She went around and got in the front passenger seat. When she was in the car, I asked her where she was going. She gave me an address, and I entered it into Google Maps on my phone. I saw that it was just 7 minutes away, and that made me feel good. At least she wasn't asking me to drive all the way across town. We started driving, and she didn't say a whole lot. She mostly just went on her phone. We did make some small conversation, talking about Thanksgiving and Black Friday shopping. Overall, she seemed pretty nice and friendly to me. The drive went by relatively quick, but we ended up going into an area that I had never been to before and was not familiar with, even though it wasn't that far away. When we got to the neighborhood where the address was, I saw that it was in the rough side of town. There were streets with lots of houses on them, most of which looked pretty run down. At last, I got to the address and pulled into the driveway. I asked her if this was it, and she said yes, but after I stopped the car, she did not immediately get out. I was confused. She was on her phone, and it looked like she was finishing up a text or something. After a few seconds, I said, "Well, I better get back home now." She said, "Oh, yeah, thank you so much." She asked me for my name, and I gave it to her. Then she opened the door and started to get out of the car. It was at that moment, right when the door opened, that I suddenly noticed a guy sprinting full speed at me. He was coming from the side of the house, and I hadn't seen him before at all. He must have been behind it. I then looked to the right and saw another guy sprinting from the other side of the house. The only thing I thought to do was drive away. I put the car in reverse and slammed my foot on the gas pedal. I started reversing, and the men both reached my car. I hit lock just in time, but the front passenger's door was still open. The guy on the right briefly grabbed it, but I was a little bit too fast. He wasn't able to hold on, and when I got out of the driveway, I put it into drive and sped out of there. I saw both men running into the street. The woman was still standing in the driveway. I called the police as soon as I made it off of the street and reported the whole thing. Then I drove all the way back home. I'm really grateful that I got away from them. I know that the woman set me up, I'm guessing to get robbed. I regret picking her up, and I would advise anybody not to ever give a stranger a ride, and not to accept rides from strangers either. That is my Black Friday horror story.
This happened back on Thanksgiving night of 2013. This was back when I was 18 years old and living with my parents. We were hosting Thanksgiving at our house, and we lived in a pretty good neighborhood. One thing that was interesting, though, is that we lived less than a mile from a local shopping area. At the end of the neighborhood, there was a busier street, and if you walked down it on the sidewalk, soon that entered an area with a bunch of stores. There was a Target, Walmart, Best Buy, and all that stuff. So this was a year where a lot of stores were actually opening on Thanksgiving night. I didn't have plans to go shopping until maybe the next day on Black Friday. I was really just enjoying Thanksgiving with my family and hanging out watching football and stuff. There was a lot of people at our house, like grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins. One of my cousins, Jake, who I'm close with in age, was probably the cousin that I hung out with the most at the time. We talked a lot during that Thanksgiving. I remember that he had the idea to walk down to the store after dinner and see how the shopping was going. At first, I was like, nah, but he said that it would be fun. He told me just how crazy things would get on Black Friday, and he had gone shopping in the past on Black Friday and said that it was fun. So soon, he had convinced me. It sounded interesting to see what the buzz was all about. The plan was to walk there and only be gone for a little while. So Jake and I left at maybe 6:30 or so. We walked down the sidewalk to the local shopping center, which only took about 15 minutes or so. I remember that when we approached, it was crazy. There were cars and people everywhere. Particularly the Target and Walmart were extremely busy. We got there, and at first we were just walking by. One of the first things we noticed was that there was a bunch of cop cars at the Walmart and the lights were flashing. We were obviously curious as to what happened, but also figured we better stay away. So we walked down to the Target and went inside and just walked around for a bit. It was pretty crazy, a lot more so than I would have expected. We didn't get anything, and a short time later we decided to head back. When we left, there were less police cars at the Walmart, but still a few of them. At that point, we walked back home, and were gone for maybe an hour total. After getting back, we just continued hanging out with the rest of the family. We were in the living room watching football and talking and stuff. Around 8 o'clock, some people started leaving. By 9 o'clock, about half the people were there, but still only a few. I remember that it was late in the football game when one of my uncles who was standing by the window said, "There's a guy walking around your backyard." Our backyard was not that big, but fenced in and had several trees and bushes in it. My dad got up and walked over to the window, and I did as well. When we got there, we saw that there was this guy sort of at the back near the fence. He was walking behind a row of trees and heading towards the back corner. It looked suspicious right away, as none of us knew him. He was wearing jeans, a gray sweatshirt with the hood concealing most of his head, and he also had a backpack strung over his shoulder. I thought that maybe he was going to go out of our yard and then into the neighbor's backyard, but instead he turned and started walking towards our house. He was just barely within our view, and he did not look at us, so I don't think he noticed us at the window. He kept walking, and soon we couldn't see him anymore. He was over towards the other end of the house, so we moved over there. My dad decided to go into the backyard and tell the guy to leave, so we went over to the door and opened it. He walked out and looked around, and I went outside behind him. I heard someone quickly moving away from the backyard towards the other side of the house. I heard the leaves on the ground moving, but we didn't see the guy as that part was out of view. He seemed to go around to the side of the house towards the front and was probably leaving. My dad yelled for whoever he was to get out of our yard. We stopped hearing the guy, so we walked around to that side of the house. We still didn't see anything, and we didn't see the guy walking off into other people's yards or down the street either. It was strange, but we figured that he was gone, and we went back inside the house. It was probably like 20 minutes later there was a knock on our front door. There was a police officer there. He asked us if we had heard anything strange or unusual. We immediately told him about the man. The officer said that he would look around, and within minutes we saw another police car get there. Then they found the same guy who we had seen still hiding in our yard. The guy was next to the house behind a bush. They arrested him, and it turned out that he had never left, even though we thought he did. The man had robbed the Walmart on Black Friday and assaulted 2 people. That's why we saw all the cop cars there. He fled the scene and ran all the way to our neighborhood and ultimately to our yard.
I'm glad that the cops looked there. We had no idea that he was still in our yard. We thought that he had left, when in reality, he just hid out of our sight. This is the craziest experience that I ever had shopping on Black Friday. For many years, starting in the 2000s, it became a tradition for me to go shopping on Black Friday. It started when I was a kid going with my mom, and it would be a mother-daughter shopping day. The sales seemed to get crazier and crazier, and we would go earlier and earlier. Then I remembered that they started opening stores on Thanksgiving Day. We never did that until 2014 when I wanted to go shopping that night. I wanted to go by myself because I wanted to get a Christmas gift for my mom. There was some other stuff that I wanted to get as well, but that was the main reason. So that Thanksgiving, I left my parents' house to go to Target, which was opening at 6 p.m. I drove there and arrived a little bit after 6, maybe 6:15. I didn't think there was a need to wait in line or to get there right at 6 o'clock. If I didn't get something because of that little bit of time, then I didn't care too much. However, the store was much crazier than I expected. The parking lot was almost completely full, but when I got in the store, it was way worse. There were people everywhere, and I mean everywhere. It was basically a giant mob of people every direction that you looked. Whether you went left, right, forward, or back, you were going to be running into someone. It was impossible to go to any part of the store with any kind of speed. You could only go at the pace of the mob. It was like being in a wave in the ocean. The herd of people would just take you along. If you wanted to go against it, it would be nearly impossible. I got swept up by the mob and taken towards electronics, which is where I was going anyways. But that's where everybody else was going too. Eventually, I made it there and tried to separate myself from the giant crowd of people. I fought my way out of it to where it was slightly less busy. I started fighting my way to look for the things that I wanted. I was looking around the electronics area, having a hard time finding things, probably because of how many people there were. After I was over there for maybe 10 minutes, I remember that this Target employee approached me. He asked if he could help me, and I said I didn't know because it was so busy. I told him what I was trying to find, and I remember that he was struggling to hear me because of how crazy it was. It was pretty loud. I remember that he told me to follow him, and he started walking along the edge of the store along the wall. I followed him, and he quickly went through these 2 swinging doors that went into the employees only area. I wasn't sure if I was supposed to follow him there, but he waved me in. I went in there, and it was crazy to see how different it was back there. We were in this back room with a bunch of high shelves and concrete floors. It was much quieter. The guy said that it was easier to talk back there, and it was. He asked me again what I was looking for, and I told him. He said that he was going to help me out, and said that they might have a few in the back. Then he started walking down the narrow walkway, and I followed him. I was wondering why I was seemingly getting special treatment, and it seemed sort of strange. We walked down there, and then took a left to the sort of back aisle. I saw him take out his cell phone as he was walking, and he started talking into it, but I couldn't really hear him. He was talking pretty quiet. Then we got to the end of that aisle there. At the back of it was a wall, and on that wall was a door leading to outside. There were a bunch of random boxes and stuff lying around as well. The man then stood there, and we were both just standing there for a few seconds. I was starting to get confused. The guy took out his phone and was looking at it. This was starting to seem wrong, but I didn't really know what to do. Then, out of nowhere, I heard a voice behind us. I looked back and saw another Target employee. He said, "Who are you guys, and what are you doing back here?" I was really confused. Then I heard the door open behind me. I looked and saw the guy who had been helping me open the door for the back room to go outside. He sprinted out, and before the door swung shut, I saw him jump into the back seat of this car. Then the car screeched away, and the door slowly closed. I turned back around super confused, and the Target employee asked me what I was doing back there and who that guy was. I told him what happened. The guy told me that the other guy did not work at Target. He was dressed as an employee, but was impersonating one. The man told me that he saw that his uniform was off and saw him going into the back room with me. That's why he went in to confront us. Then we went back out to the crazy area of Target. I was really weirded out by the whole thing and left and went back to my parents. I couldn't stop thinking about how crazy that was. When I thought about it more, I realized the man might have been trying to kidnap me or something. Maybe he was communicating on his phone with the people who were driving the car, and he was planning to take me out the door and shove me into the car and then drive away. He certainly wasn't actually trying to help me. I'm glad that the other Target worker was there and noticed us. I
used to work at a mall as a maintenance worker many years ago. The mall was pretty large and had lots of stores in it. Back in the year 1999, we were expecting to be very busy for Black Friday. The mall was closed on Thanksgiving and opened early at 7 a.m. the day after. I worked Wednesday night until past close, which was at 9 p.m. So I was working late Wednesday, making sure that things were good for the big day on Friday. I recall that I had Thanksgiving off, but was working early on Friday. I started at 5 a.m., 2 hours before we opened. When I got to work that morning, it was still dark out and hardly anybody was there yet, but there were a few people lined up outside waiting for us to open, which I thought was crazy. I entered the mall and things were dark and quiet. There were a few other people there, but not many, and they were other workers who were spread out. I was kind of by myself in an area. I was doing some work when I thought I heard a noise of somebody walking nearby. I was not aware of anybody else in that immediate area, but assumed it to be a coworker. However, it was weird because I heard the footsteps again, and they were kind of around a corner in an employees-only hallway. This hallway had maintenance stuff in it, and I was really the only person who used it. Curious as to who was there, I called out asking, but there was no response. It seemed strange. So I stopped what I was doing and started to walk over there. Now it was completely silent and I heard nothing. I walked into the hallway, which was very dark. I went into a room which was empty and saw nothing there. Then I continued down the hallway. There was another room which was empty. Then there was this maintenance closet, and I saw that the door was ever so slightly ajar. I walked over there with a bad feeling. When I opened the door fully, it was very dark in there. But then I saw movement. Within seconds, I saw a man emerge from behind a box. The guy got up and then ran past me and out of the room. I was shocked. I watched him then run down the hallways into the mall. I walked out there and then radioed into security about it. Luckily, we had extra security for that day, and they were all at the other end of the mall mainly. The man was running around the mall trying to find another place to hide, but security was able to locate him, thankfully. He got kicked out, and it turns out that he was there early for the Black Friday sales. It's unknown how the man got in, but he was trying to be the first person there. Hours later, the mall opened, and people went crazy shopping. It was the busiest that I had ever seen the place. Thankfully, nothing that crazy happened the rest of my time working there. I used to work at a sporting goods store. This is something that happened just a few years ago. Our store is pretty large, and Black Friday is one of the busiest days of the year for us. The only other day that compares is probably the Saturday before Christmas. For Black Friday on this year, I was working as well as pretty much everyone else on staff. We would even hire extra people for seasonal work each year. I typically moved around the store organizing things and also helping customers. In my time there, I had worked in all departments and knew the entire store very well. It was always a lot of work during Thanksgiving and Christmas time, but it was also fun. There was lots of customers, and I would end up making a good amount of money with all the hours that I got. On this year for Black Friday, I was working a long shift. We opened our doors at 6 a.m., and I was working from 5:30 to 3:30, a 10-hour shift. When we opened, there was a lot of customers. It really wasn't too crazy, though. I was kept busy right away. People were all over, and I helped a lot of them, showing them where things were and telling them the sales. I also was kept busy cleaning and reorganizing things from the rush of customers. The first 5 hours really flew by. The next thing I knew, it was the late morning. Things sort of calmed down a little bit, but were still busy. I remember that I was in the back of the store working when I got called up to customer service by one of the store managers. I went up and there was a cop there, which seemed odd. I thought that maybe there was a shoplifting incident or something. My manager, as well as the cop, said that they were briefing people about a situation. I learned that a nearby store had been robbed at gunpoint early in the morning. The suspect fled, but it was possible that he was still in the area. I hadn't heard about it at all, and I hadn't seen any police or anything yet. They said they were keeping it quiet and only telling the employees or something like that. It sounded like it was more than likely the guy was long gone by now, but they just wanted us to beware. There was a chance that he was hiding in plain sight. I was shown a picture of the guy that was taken by a surveillance camera. It was a really clear photo for it being surveillance. The guy wasn't wearing a mask or anything, and I said that I would keep an eye out. Obviously, I never thought that anything would come of it. I went back to work after that and quickly forgot about the guy. I was pretty busy with the store still having lots of customers and stuff. Several hours later, and just a couple more hours until I was off, I was now working at the front of the store. I was kind of near the entrance doors. The store was a little bit less busy now.
As I was standing there, I heard the automatic doors start to slide open, and I glanced over to see a customer entering the store. I was going to say hi like I would to any customer coming in if I happened to be working by the doors. As soon as I saw the person entering, though, my jaw dropped. It was the same guy who I had seen a picture of who was wanted by the cops. I hadn't even been thinking about it and had completely forgot, but now that I was seeing him, it instantly jogged my memory. I couldn't believe it. When the guy walked in, we locked eyes. He must have seen the look on my face. As soon as he was about to take a step inside, he stopped. Then he turned around and walked out. I quickly ran and found a manager and reported that I saw the guy. The cops got called back to the store, but the guy was gone by then. They looked around without success. I realized that the guy must have noticed that I recognized him and then left. I'm not sure why he was entering our store. Was it to buy something normally? Or could it have been to rob us? Either way, I'm glad that he left. A few days later, he did end up being caught by police. It was a surprise that he stayed in the area. That was a Black Friday memory that I will never forget.
I have a really crazy experience that happened a few years ago on Black Friday. I'm a female and in my mid-20s. At this particular time, I went with my best friend Stephanie to go Black Friday shopping. We live not too far away from a really large mall, and on Black Friday, it's a fun place to be. Sure, there are quite a few other people shopping there as well, but that doesn't bother me. We also have a friend named Jack who we went to school with, and he was working at one of the stores in the mall. So Stephanie and I wanted to say hi to him at some point. We arrived at the mall early in the morning and started shopping. As you would guess, it was very crowded. We got a few things, and then we went to the store that Jack was working at and said hi to him. And his store was also very busy like the rest of them. After leaving the store, we were making our way towards the other end of the mall when I got a text message. I remember that I took out my phone and I saw that it was from a number I did not recognize. The text was telling me to come back to the store. I realized that this had to be Jack, except I already had his number in my phone. He was in my contacts, and I had him under his name, so I didn't know why this would show up as just a number and not Jack. I asked who it was by texting just to be sure. He texted back saying Jack. I showed the text to Stephanie, and we then went back to Jack's store to see him. After arriving there, he said hi again, and that he was surprised to see us so soon. I told him how he had texted me, and he said that he did not text me. I showed him the text, and he said it wasn't him. He even showed me his phone, and he had not in fact texted me, and that was also not in fact his number. It was really strange. I looked around, wondering if somebody else in the store was behind the text messages. It was packed in there. I had really no way of knowing who it could have been. After that, Stephanie and I left the store once again, and we walked back out to where we had been going before the text. A while later, we went to the food court and were sitting at a table and eating. It was very busy there as well. When we were there though, I got another text on the phone from the same number. I looked at it, and this time the text said that I looked cute. I was creeped out, and I looked around again. However, anybody could have been sending these texts. There were hundreds of people within my sight. Stephanie and I were not really sure what to do. I texted the number back asking who it was, but they did not answer me. Instead, about 5 minutes later, while we were still sitting there, they sent another text. This one was a picture though. I looked at it, and it was of me, taken probably just seconds prior, and it was really zoomed in. I looked at it for a while, and then I looked around for the direction that the photo was taken from. After scanning around the food court, I finally saw it. There was a man standing pretty far away from us near the edge of the food court to my left, and he was just staring at me. He had this creepy grin on his face, and when Stephanie saw him, she was also creeped out. We decided to just get up and leave the mall. After standing though, I saw the man start to walk in our direction. He was still a long ways away though. We both got to moving, and we walked very quickly to the opposite way where the man was. There was enough people around that we were pretty much able to get a good distance away from him. We quickly took an escalator down to the lower level, and then we found the way to the parking garage that we had parked in. I kept looking back over my shoulder, but I never saw the guy. We were able to leave and get home after that, and I blocked the guy's number as well. I'm not sure how he got my number in the first place. I haven't seen him since though. We reported him to the mall, and hopefully he was either found and banned or will not do anything like that again.
This happened on Black Friday in 2004. It had been a great Thanksgiving, and I was hoping to have a great Black Friday with my wife. We got up early to go Black Friday shopping at all the stores. First, we went to Walmart, and things got off to an interesting start. We got there shortly after they opened, which was around 6 a.m. I think. There were some things that we were hoping to get, but I wasn't depending on it. I knew that things can get crazy, so if we missed out, it wasn't a big deal. Obviously, the store was busy. My wife and I tried to go through the large crowd towards electronics, where all the action was. Most people were there trying to get some type of TV, video game, phone, or computer, and I was no different. I was hoping for a new TV, and so we walked back there as fast as we could. By the time we got there, the scene was even crazier than I expected, and I had expected it to be wild. There were people everywhere, and some were actually fighting over stuff. I went over to the TVs with my wife. I saw that there were a couple left of the kind that I wanted. As I was walking over, I saw somebody grab one. Now there was just one left. I hurried to go faster now, and I heard my wife say, "Go for it." So I did not run, but I speed walked over to the last television set. When I got there, I was just about to reach out and grab it when this guy came flying in out of nowhere. He ran into me and completely knocked me over onto the ground because he hit me at an angle where I didn't see him at all. Because I had not seen him coming, I fell and the man tripped over me, and then he fell to the ground as well. We were both on the ground and the guy quickly got up. But when he did, I guess someone else took the last TV. I had no idea because I didn't see it as I was still on the floor. The next thing I knew, my wife came over to me and asked if I was okay. I was fine and I stood back up. All of a sudden, the guy came back over to me who had ran into me and got in my face. He said that I had tripped him. I told him that I never saw him coming and said that he knocked me over. He said that because of me, he didn't get the last TV. I asked him where it went, and he said some other guy took it. This angered me because I had wanted it too, but I also knew that it wasn't my fault. I said he shouldn't have ran me over, and I was glad that he didn't get the TV. Well, that really ticked the guy off, and he started cursing at me. My wife said we should go, sensing things were heating up in the argument. I decided that it would be best to just back away, so I turned and left. The man wasn't happy with this though. He started to follow us, still cursing at me. I wanted badly to turn around and punch him in the face, but I knew that that would only make things worse, so I just ignored him. Eventually, we were able to get away from him and blend back in with the crowd. We shopped around the store and soon found some other things to buy. After being in the store for a while, my wife and I went up and checked out. Then we left and headed to another store. I remember that several hours later we were at this type of furniture store. My wife and I were looking at the items when my cell phone rang. I didn't have caller ID as cell phones were much different back then. I answered it and heard somebody who I didn't immediately recognize. It was a man and he was very angry. Soon though, I realized that it was the same guy who I had gotten into it with at Walmart. This blew my mind as I had no idea how he got my phone number. He was just harassing me and cursing at me more. He said that he wanted to talk to me and asked me where I was. I told him to leave me alone, and he asked me when I was going home. He then said that he was going to get me back. But right in the middle of him saying that, I hung up the phone. He immediately tried calling me again, but I didn't answer. He kept trying to call, I'm sure, because my phone kept ringing, so I just turned it off. I kept wondering how he got my number though. My wife and I continued shopping. Eventually, we were done for the day and went back home. Things were good then, and I turned my phone back on. The guy didn't call. However, that night when it was pretty late, there was a knock on our front door. This seemed odd right away, but I didn't know who it was. I went to a window and looked out and saw that same guy. He started loudly banging on the door and yelling at me to answer. Then he tried opening it a few times. I didn't know what this guy was capable of, but now that he was at my house, I wasn't going to back down. I went over to the front door against my wife's wishes and stormed out. I started yelling at the guy to get off my property, and he was still cursing at me. Instantly, when I got in his face, he took a swing at me and partly hit me. I shoved him back, and he tried to push me to the ground. I ran towards him and tackled him, and we both went down. Then we were just kind of rolling around swinging at each other for a while. Eventually, the guy pulled himself away and got up. I got up as well and thought that we were going for round 2, but instead, the guy walked off to his car in the street and then left. We didn't call the cops or anything, and he was gone. Then I went inside, and my wife showed me how to block his phone number. After that, I never heard from him or saw him again. It was a crazy thing. I still don't know how he got my number or how he got my address. It's possible that he followed me, but I hadn't noticed. Because when I checked out at Walmart, I do think I gave them my phone number. But then again, the guy would have had to be within feet of us, and he also would have had to follow us to get to our house. The store was busy, but I think I would have noticed. It remains a mystery to me to this day.